Good evening. I call to order the September 13th, 2021 business meeting of the Cincinnati Board of Education. We welcome everyone and request those here in attendance that please silence your cell phones and electronic devices. And to our public, we apologize. We had a slight technical difficulty there, but we thank you for your patience and thank you for joining us tonight here for our September 13th board meeting. All right, let's get started with the pledge. Ms. Bates, would you please lead us?
Yes.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bates. And Ms. Wagner, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Bates?
Present.
Ms. Bolton?
Present.
Mrs. Bowers here. Mr. Lindy? Vice President Messer?
Present. All right. Members of our public who wish to speak may do so this evening by clicking the chat button now. The chat feature will be open for the next 5 minutes. Please submit your name, your affiliation to the district, your school community, your topic, and your contact information should you have a question that you'd like to have a response to. Thank you. Thank you. All right. May I have a motion to approve the following minutes from special meeting, August 16th, 2021. Special public meeting, August 16th, 2021. Special public meeting, August 18th, 2021. Special meeting, August 18th, 2021. Special meeting, August 23rd, 2021. And business meeting, August 23rd, 2021.
So moved.
May I have a second? Thank you. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Any
Aye.
opposed? All right. The minutes of all those many meetings have been approved. So thank you for everybody who had to participate in some way in all of those meetings, not the least of which are great staff members who do a great job getting those turned around. So thank you, Phyllis and Pat. All right. Tonight is a very special night because we're honoring a great Cincinnatian. All right, let me start that over. Tonight is a special night because we get to honor a great Cincinnatian. We'll be honoring the passing of former Cincinnati Public School Board member Linwood L. Battle. We would also like to welcome the family of Mr. Battle, who is joining us tonight personally here in our virtual environment. Thank you for sharing with us in this moment as we honor your loved one. All right. So to get us started, Ms. Bates.
Yes. I'm bringing forward a resolution memorializing Linwood L. Battle, and I present this resolution for adoption as printed.
Is there a second?
Second, please.
Thank you. All right. Let's start with Ms. Jones.
Okay, thank you. Whereas on August 29th, 2021, Linwood L. Battle, a former Cincinnati Public Schools Board of Education member and board president, passed away at the age of 78. And
Whereas in November 1991, Mr. Battle decided to run for and was elected to a seat on the Cincinnati Board of Education, serving a total of 8 years from 1992 to 1999. And
Whereas during his tenure, Mr. Battle served as president in 1993 and 1999, vice president in 1992 and 1998, chaired the Facilities Committee for 4 years, served as a member of the Facilities, Legislative, and Program Committees, and was the board's representative to the Cincinnati Youth Collaborative and the Hamilton County Family and Children First Council. And
whereas during Linwood L. Battle's 8 years of service in Cincinnati Public Schools, many far-reaching district reform decisions were made, and some of those he was most proud of being the adoption of a district-wide uniform policy and the implementation of a Junior Reserve Officer Training Corps, JROTC program at several district high schools. And
whereas Mr. Battle was respected for his leadership skills and expertise, professional demeanor, integrity, and his valuable contribution to the education of the children of Cincinnati. And
whereas Linwood L. Battle's commitment to community service did not stop with the Cincinnati Board of Education, as he also served as a member of the Board of Directors of the Children's Museum, the Cincinnati Museum Center for Natural and Cultural History and Science, the Dan Beard Council of the Boy Scouts of America, the National Conference for Community and Justice Board of Trustees, Cincinnati Arts Festivals, Local Arts Ensemble, the Cincinnati Association, and the Black Male Coalition.
Now, therefore, be it resolved that on September 13th, 2021, the Cincinnati Board of Education expresses its deepest sympathy to the members of the Battle family for their great loss and remembers Linwood L. Battle for the countless contributions he made to the education of Cincinnati's children and our community under his years of service to the Cincinnati Public Schools. Okay, board members, would anyone like to add some comments? States?
Yes, thank you. I had known Mr. Battle since the beginning of his board service. And he had a very gentle way about him, but he was very firm in his decisions and very, very clear in his convictions. I mean, we all know of his passion for children as demonstrated by the community service that he was involved in, and most of the organizations that I read were children-based organizations. That was his passion. And in addition to his 8 years of board service. And Mr. Battle was the consummate gentleman. He was an awesome person. I enjoyed all of my conversations and time that I had to spend with him. And I sincerely extend my deepest and sincerest sympathy to the Battle family for this great loss.
Thank you. Ms. Bolden?
thank you, Mr. Chair. I have so many different memories from different parts of even this resolution. Let me just start personally by saying when I was first joined the board, one of my first meetings was with Mr. Battle, who I respected so greatly because I knew of his work with John Daniels in the Black Male Coalition and knew of that from years and years before. And he was always, and it sounds strange, but a calming effect. When you first get on the board, you're ready to do everything possible. And then you start to learn, I can't do everything, I got to focus. And he was always focused on the biggest things and focused on the children. And that was always where he was. And I will say that in the later years, we would casually meet and informally meet at the powerhouse of Dunkin' Donuts. And he enjoyed his Dunkin' Donuts and enjoyed casual conversation about the board and what the board was doing and where CPS was and where it was going. And I always stood so proud. But the thing I'm most pleased about is he was very excited about the possibility of doing the junior ROTC, reintroducing that. And I know that he spoke often with Chris Nelms, our board member, about that possibility, and he was thrilled that we were in the process of reintroducing that. And I very frankly, I think what we should do, where that's going to be located and the names that are needed for that unit, I think we should name in honor of Mr. Battle, because he was the first one to bring it to us.
Ms. Bowers?
thank you, Vice President Messer. I did not have the pleasure of meeting Mr. Battle in person, but I am familiar and have been connected with Monica in a couple of different arenas. And it sounds like all the attributes that I hear about Mr. Linwood has definitely been passed down to Monica. So my condolences to the family at the loss of your loved one.
Mr. Lindy.
Thank you, Mr. Messer. I also didn't have the chance of knowing Mr. Battle, but I wanted to extend my condolences to the family and thank you for his service to the Cincinnati Public Schools and its children. Thank you.
Checking with our members who are virtual this evening, if there are any comments. Okay. Family members, again, thank you for joining us this evening. Would you like to make any comments this evening?
This is Monica. Can you hear me?
We sure
Yes.
can.
Hi. I saw my uncle there too. Is it okay if I go first? Is that okay? Okay. I am just flooded with emotion, I have to be honest, but really humbled by this experience and so grateful for what you guys have done for my dad tonight. I think he's smiling down, and it just represents a lot of hard work, dedication, and love. And I say truly love because there's a quote that comes to mind that my dad used often by Dr. Martin Luther King. And he said that service is the rent that we all pay for living. And he was very, very passionate about children, advocacy, Cincinnati Public Schools. And thank you so much from the bottom of our hearts for honoring him in this way. It's very touching and much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Anybody else in the family?
This is J.C. Battle. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
I'm Linwood's youngest brother, and I'm just honored and very, very appreciative for what the board has done in honoring my brother tonight. Like my niece said, Monica, that he would be smiling down. One thing about when he ran and I was his campaign manager, one particular thing that we had in mind was to think about the children. And at that time, I believe there was 40,000 children in the district. And we said that we would just raise $1 for each child. And that's what we did. And for our first time that we ran, we won. And we won for the children to give back to what we were given many years from the West End to Avondale to the public schools. And I am just truly grateful for what y'all are doing in honoring and maybe re-erecting and reestablishing the junior ROTC program. As you know, he was a captain in the Army, and all three of my brothers, we are all Vietnam vets. So we want to give that back to the children in the greater Cincinnati area, that discipline, that loyalty, that pride of being a Cincinnatian, especially with the Cincinnati Public Schools. And again, I just want to thank all of you for all your attention to details of what he did in his life. But most of all, he was a father, he was a brother, and he was a true friend. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So we have a motion and we have a second. Ms. Wagner, would you like to call the roll?
Mrs. Bates?
Aye.
Ms. Bolton?
Aye.
Mrs. Bowers?
Yes.
Mr. Lindy?
Aye.
Vice President Messer?
Yes. Okay, to the family, the resolution will be put on a plaque and delivered to your family in very short order. Our board staff will be in contact following tonight's meeting to make sure that that gets to you. And on behalf of the entire Cincinnati Public School District family, thank you for sharing Mr. Battle with all of us as he worked for the betterment of Cincinnati Public School students. I didn't know him either, but when he passed, I had lots of people ask me if I did have the chance, and they said, well, what a shame you didn't get to meet him. But I am happy that I did loosely get to know his daughter. And I'll tell you, there's a lot of North Avondale Rockets who still miss her greatly. But she left a great impression there. And to me, that was a great extension of his legacy on another whole generation of kids. And what I also learned is he inspired not just those in his own family to serve, but people throughout the city. So thank you to the entire Battle family for joining us tonight. And we wish you all the best. Okay. Now, for our committee reports, we've got quite a few here. So if we could do our best to give the top line highlights, maybe the 3 to 4 most important things you'd like people to take away from the dead trees in their files would be great. And then, of course, all of these detailed minutes are available on our website, in board docs, etc. Okay, so starting off with the races tonight, she's going to set the pace for us. Ms. Bates, please present the August 23rd, 2021 Health and Safety Committee meeting report.
Yes, we received our monthly report from our governmental liaison, Senator Eric Kearney gave us a report which is detailed in writing and attached to the minutes. And part of that is that we are going to be setting up coordinating a breakfast and a meet and greet with our local delegation at one of our high schools. And that would be something that all the board members and staff members, senior staff members would be attending. We've had this before. And it's very successful, and bringing these leaders into our schools makes a big impression. So that's in the planning. We received a mental health and social emotional learning update from Dr. Carrie Bunger, and also more information on Grant Us Hope, which is a program that is regarding suicide prevention. And of course, because it's the Health and Safety Committee, we received a COVID-19 pandemic update and our continued look at the work of the school resource officers. We did receive information regarding the goals and the people that are responsible for these goals. And also, I'm not sure if this is in the minutes, but Interim Superintendent Amat has appointed a liaison from her administration to the SROs, because when I met with them, with Board Member Bowers, that was an omission, that they did not have a direct communication with us, and now they do. So we're going to be clear on what their function is in our continuing evaluation, and way to make their work clear to the public and to the school community, and also the value that they bring to us. And I present these minutes for acceptance as printed, and we'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Bates. Any questions? Okay, hearing Ms. Bolton, as chair of the Budget, Finance, and Growth Committee, please present the August 25th, 2021 for information only Audit Committee meeting report.
Fortunately, we did not have a quorum, so as protocol indicates, the best that we could do was to share information, and indeed, we shared a great deal. And don't worry, Mr. Chair, we won't share all of it again tonight. So as we share, we again announced the fiscal year 2021 audit engagement kickoff, and then talked about the various topics within that audit. And there are about 20 or so listed in the minutes. And the internal auditor, chief internal audit person, presented what those 20 were. We also had yet another report on the recommendations updates regarding benefits audit that we have been working on and improving a great deal. And then we had an audit status report for the fiscal year 22. We're always being audited. It's, I think the treasurer will tell us it's around 20 audits or so that we receive, the internal, external, state, local, and everything. Is that true?
Yes, they vary from year to year, but 15 to 20 a year.
15 to 20. So we are one of the most audited groups there is. And then we continued, and it's the final thing we'll be doing tonight when Mr. Lindy presents a change in the policy of the internal audit and audit committee charter. We've talked about this for 3 weeks, 3 meetings, and that is the change in the job title for Lauren Roberts to Director of Internal Audit to Chief Audit Executive. So as we make that change in the policy and the audit charter, that will conclude that effort. And we've talked why that's been being done. And then we had financial updates, the same kind of financial updates that we received in finance and full board, particular emphasis on the cliff issue, meaning the money that is coming from the federal government, how that will be sustained or not sustained, and the decisions that were being made along the way. And I think the audit committee was thrilled with the efforts that the treasurer has taken and the superintendent and all of the staff to begin to not only think about that, but plan so far ahead for the committee. And then we had one member of the public. We had President Julie Sellers present at the hearing of the public and talking about some of the impact that the transportation change by Metro has caused within the school day and beyond the school day. So I submit and appreciate our wonderful community audit committee and look forward to the next meeting, which is, I think, quarterly or so, and submit and hope for approval.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? All right. Doing pretty good here on time. Thank you. Mr. Moroski, please present the August 26, 2021 Policy and Equity Committee meeting report.
I will do my best, Mr. Chair, to not ruin that. We had a lot to talk about, but most of it will be talked about tonight, so I think I can skim over some. Can everybody hear me? Are we good? Yeah?
Yes, sorry. I didn't know my
Great. So Policy and Equity Committee met on August 26th at 9 a.m. in person. We welcomed the public in. We had a couple visitors, which was nice. I'll run through our minutes here. A number of things appear under resolution, so again, you'll see them later. We began by looking at the bylaws and committee of the whole, specifically in the bylaws, as we were asked to do. And during that, Board Member Bolton advised General Counsel to do an additional review of the section responsibilities of the board and align that with Ohio Revised Code. And so we are going to revisit all of that at our September board meeting, which will not be on the 30th. We need to pick another date. I will take this time to ask Board Member Lindy to send me which of the dates I sent work so that we can pick a date for the new policy meeting. The internal auditor, as Ms. Bolton referenced, we changed her title in policy. That'll be on the agenda later this evening. We reviewed policies 3111 and 4111, both dealing with creating a position. Very little was changed, but we have the updates on the agenda for later during resolution. You all got red line drafts, so you can see them there. Policy 3111.1, also about creating a principal, specifically selection of the principals. Again, minor changes. We had a good presentation from Dr. Poe and Ms. Bunty. You'll have an opportunity to vote on that policy later. We had more robust discussion about policy 3112 and 4112. This is board employee communication. You may recall I presented this in a meeting packet, a minutes packet rather, not too long ago. A few things here I will just pause on for a second. The reason we brought this up is the policy is very short. It has 2 bullet points, A and B. And A refers to employee to board communications. and B is the other way around, board to employee. Both stipulate that both channels going whichever way have to go through the superintendent. We thought as a committee it was important to bring this policy to light because that's just, A, that's not what happens. And B, we may need to either scrap this and create a new policy or add to it. And so while we have nothing to vote on tonight, I just want to let you know where we're at and what we will take up at our next committee meeting. Committee member Bolton advised administration to define the roles, limits to those roles, and procedures and protocols regarding maintaining the hierarchy of authority. We all agree that there needs to be some protocol for how employees address board address employee. That was not the issue. The issue was what's realistic. Ms. Bolton recommended that we limit, limiting what board to employees can do, but limiting what employees to the board can do is a tricky thing, particularly because we're talking about First Amendment rights issues. She advised at that time that maybe the whistleblower policy could be somehow included in this new policy. And then we sort of rounded out the conversation. My take in this whole thing was if the goal of bullet point A and B, which, board to employee, employee to board, if the goal of that is to manage communications, then we need to just be clear about what sort of channel we have as board members, in my opinion at least, so that we can hear from the community of our employees as they impact our decisions. And so we know we have those channels in some regards, so just being clear about that, because again, you can go look at 3112, 4112 on your own, and I'm sure you'd have the same reaction we did, like, well, this just isn't how reality. So we will take this up again at our September meeting. Policy 1100, district organization. Board member Bolton had put this on the agenda. We discussed the district's organizational chart and inquired about the board approving the organizational chart, as that is done fairly commonly in other districts. And so an action that came out of that was that at Policy and Equity in September, the admin will provide our committee with a copy of the current chart, and Mr. Hoying will look into what the board's role is as far as approving an org chart like other districts do. Transgender students, Title IX update. It's long in your packet, but I can make it pretty brief. The good news is that President Biden reinstated protections for transgender students as soon as he took office. One of the many things he threw out from the president before him. But the good news was that when the president before President Biden rescinded protections for transgender students, we never changed anything. We just kept doing what we always did, which was take care of kids. And so that's the only update I have. The reason we had it on the agenda was to kind of just get an update, like what had happened. And the good news is nothing happened under the other guy. We kept doing what we knew was the right thing to do. And so that's that piece. And then as we near the end here, as everybody knows, we have a presentation, a board matters item, and a resolution about the vaccine requirement policy. And so I'm not going to spend much time on this. I could, but we're going to spend a lot of the rest of the meeting on this. The only things I do just want to highlight for y'all is General Counsel Hoying reported the legislation in Ohio does not permit requiring employees to become we are allowed to now require the vaccinations because it has been approved by the FDA. Ms. Stephanie Scott, the Assistant General Counsel, made us aware of pending House Bill 248, which the Vaccine Choice and Anti-Discrimination Act, which could possibly nullify this policy if we pass it this evening. Right now, it's not in effect in the state, but it's just something to keep our eye on. And certainly, if we pass this policy this evening, that I know Ms. Bates and Mr. Kearney and Mr. Glover, our lobbyists, would keep their eye on going forward. The actions that we took, I'll just spell out so for the public's edification. There were a number of actions taken at the end of this conversation. One was we are recommending this policy for approval. That's Mr. Lindy, Ms. Bolton, and myself. We are recommending this policy be approved this evening. we are recommending that that we will discuss the non-compliance of the vaccine policy this evening as well, which Mr. Hoying and Ms. Scott will talk about, I assume, during the presentation. The administration will cross-reference vaccine policies around the country, which we will hear about. We have invited, or we asked the administration to invite medical experts. And again, lastly, which I've already stated, we will recommend passage this evening. Lastly, before other business, we got into transportation policies. It seemed to the board, as we looked at policy 8600.01, supervision of transported students, and 8600.02, transportation of students, period, that we may be violating our own policies as per the Metro plan, which is why we put this on the agenda. Ms. Bolton advised administration to review these policies in an ad hoc committee meeting to avoid waiting for a next policy meeting. And the review would be to determine how Metro's plan is outside of the district's policies. I stated, once again, as I've said in this forum before, it would be good for us to know what Metro's intentions are going forward, i.e. to reinstate routes or to not reinstate routes so that we know what to do next. And Ms. Bolton asked, is CPS or Metro responsible for the district's transportation policies? Because our policies seem to indicate we may not be doing what we say we will, and it's kind of out of our hands at this point. So we are going to address that. We talked about it on September 1st at the committee of the whole meeting. That was one of the actions that came out of this, and so we've already been updated on some of these items. And lastly, in other business, I brought up some concerns the community has had, and I know Ms. Bates has also voiced concern with our current quarantining policies and students who are out of school for a long period of time that are not actually sick. And there was some confusion as to what policy we were following. Our own attendance policy, which is number 5200, for those who don't have all the numbers memorized, the 5200 attendance policy states that we follow CDC guidelines, and there were a couple instances where it appeared we may not have been doing that. We did get students back into school, but some clarity on what our quarantine policy is, I think, is warranted. And hopefully, I think we'll talk about that later this evening. And lastly, Mr. Lindy and Ms. Bolton and I thought this was great. Mr. Lindy advised the new internal auditor, or chief auditor, to audit, if district policies are being followed. And this, I think, is awesome. This is not something, we had done, at least since I've been on the board. And so Mr. Lindy gave Ms. Bolton and I some homework, and at our next policy committee meeting, Ms. Bolton and I will bring a few policies that we would like to be audited to see if we're actually following them. And Mr. Lindy will do the same. And I present the minutes as written.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? All right.
Mr.
Ms.
Messer,
Bates.
Mr. Messer,
Yes, ma'am.
I
President Jones?
do have a question. I wanted to ask, this is all really, really good information. I really appreciate it. It looks like a lot of hard work has gone into the review of these policies, and I support the ongoing review, as you stated. The last item that you brought up was about the internal auditor reviewing policies. So is the goal to begin to think very systematically about how there is an ongoing review by the audit committee, or just this one time only and this as a sort of a pilot? Tell me a little bit more about that.
I'll kick it over to Mr. Lindy, but I believe the heart of the issue is that this kind of become just sort of par for the course at CPS, that we check in to make sure our policies are being followed. But I'll ask Mr. Lindy to weigh in if he doesn't mind.
Okay.
Mr. Lindy?
Thanks, Vice President Messer. Ms. Jones, I think Mr. Moroski summarized it well. My question, I think, at the beginning of the year, which was my first year on policy, was, do we do any checking to see whether or not the policies were passing our lives and breathing? And it seemed like this was a nice opportunity to start small There are a lot of policies. I don't think we can check all of them at once, but my hope is we could look at a couple areas this year and in so doing start a practice that over time would give us a way to look through everything. But I also think this is open to being shaped by other board members and other administrators, because to my knowledge, it's not something we've done before. Our thought was to try it in a small way, learn some things, and then see what we might continue.
Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Bates?
Well, the policies are on a 3-year rotation, so they have been reviewed on a regular basis for veracity, for updates. So,
Mr. Lindy?
Yeah, I think the 3-year review, as I understand it, and I defer to folks who have been here much, much longer than I have, checks for what we think the policies should be. And do we think that what should be true is different than it was 3 years ago? I think the question I'm trying to ask is a different one, which is not about what do we think should be true, but how faithfully are we following the current policy to begin with?
Mm-hmm.
And to look at that with some systematic vigor, and to continue the 3-year review, but also to find out, have we really been doing all of these in the
Bates?
well, that would be, you're right, that's kind of an ongoing concern. And the reason that many of our policies haven't been followed is because our staff isn't always educated on the policy. So it's not that they're obsolete or they don't have value. It's that the staff may not even know that there's a policy on this topic. And I know that Superintendent Mitchell made a very concerted effort to educate the staff on an ongoing basis of the policy. So with continued education of the staff, that could ensure that the policies are followed and should be followed. So follow up on that, I think, would be valuable to make sure that indeed the education is working. You know.
So what I'm hearing is 3 things. On every 3 years, we're reviewing whether we have the right policies. Then, thanks to the work of Superintendent Mitchell, and I'm sure that has continued to get the procedures behind the policies and make sure everybody understands them. And then there is, now are we actually using them? Quality check. So sounds like a really good sequence of events there. So thank you for that. Good clarification. All right. Ms. Bates, could you give us a couple highlights from the September 1st Committee of the Whole meeting?
Yes. A big part of our meeting of the Committee of the Whole, September 1st, was regarding health and safety, and the full board received updates on the Vision Zero programs and the Safe Routes to School. And there has been quite a bit of collaboration on this between the district, between the City of Cincinnati's Department of Transportation and Engineering, and also the Ohio Department of Transportation. And this collaboration allows us the ability to apply for federal and state Safe Routes to School funding beginning this year. So we'll have to follow up, of course, would be if that did occur, but there's plenty of ways to implement this with additional funding. And that's also in there, new marked crosswalks, school zone flashers, just making the areas around our schools safer and more visible to people who are using the streets nearby, and the whole objective is keeping our students as safe as possible going to and from school. We received a transportation update, which is ongoing. You can read the details in the minutes, but basically, Ms. Trimble Oliver reported on the Metro data dashboard, a yellow bus analysis, RFPs for yellow bus for next year, and continued call center improvement so that our families' calls are answered promptly. We also discussed transportation policies. The administration is going to provide regular updates regarding the timeliness of buses to ensure that they are getting our children to school on time and home at a reasonable time in the evening. And we also talked about the lottery process for Montessori students that were rising seventh graders, and their what was proposed was an early Montessori application for those students who have been with us, CPS Montessori elementary students rising to seventh grade, that they would have an opportunity to apply early and receive early responses as to their placements for the following school year. So with that, I present these minutes for acceptance.
Any questions or comments? Ms. Bolton?
Thank you for that summary. One comment, or maybe two. Appreciate the update regarding one of our students that was injured in the first week of school regarding the transportation. Appreciate the fact that he's progressing well, and that the administration updated us on that. The other was that, at least in these early numbers, I believe it was in the committee of the whole that we heard that only about half of our normal numbers for Metro are showing up in the current arrangement. And to the superintendent's point, again and again, even before city council, a couple of weeks ago, we can't educate anybody that we can't get to school. And right now it's interesting, as we should monitor those numbers as they progress and hope that they improve. But at any rate, that's the first indication that the extra routes are not serving our children.
But just a point of clarification, it wasn't that we had half the students attending school. It was just that they weren't using the buses.
Metro.
I just didn't want to make sure people didn't
Thank
think.
you.
Yeah.
Yes,
Right,
appreciate
right,
that
right.
clarification.
Yeah.
And
They're getting there. It's thanks to many of our parents and caregivers and neighbors and friends and everybody else. But just that little quick.
Thank you.
Vice President Messer. And I say this at every meeting, but I want people to know this. The reason we went to paying full fare and extra routes for our students is when we did begin doing that, high school attendance went up significantly. And it's just very, very frustrating that tool that we use to get our students to school on a timely way, in a way that's very reliable, is now in the hands of a board that nobody knows. And they're making these critical decisions that can adversely affect attendance for our students, which has really, really helped the academic achievement of our high school students, improved our graduation rates, and we've made great strides in those areas. And that's a huge concern for us now, that many of these students, as demonstrated with the lack of use of the passes, even though some may be getting there other ways, some are not. And that's why the board in this meeting was requesting ongoing data checks.
Thank you. All right. Last but not least, Ms. Bowers, would you please present the September 3rd, 2021 Student Achievement and District Instructional Performance Committee report?
Absolutely, Vice President Messer. The Student Achievement and District Instructional Performance Committee met on Friday, September 3rd. Our first presenter was Ms. Sarah Morales, Manager of World Languages. She provided the update to the committee on the world languages across the district, the different programs in different schools. She expressed that there were 26 of the 66 Cincinnati public schools had a world language offer program. All of the CPS schools had at least one 2-year language program, and 12 out of the 48 elementary schools had some type of language program offered in the building. She also explained to us that the decision on what type of program, the FLES versus the FLEX, was really done in a local decision, and each school community decided on which program they wanted in their building, which I thought was very good and collaborative. Vera Brooks, Director of Early Childhood, presented a wonderful, well-detailed work plan. Identified in the work plan was data analysis. It identified that early childhood was piloting a STEM instruction social emotional learning, and the focus on parent engagement. She identified that we were 74.3% of our preschools were actually had seats that are reserved for our students. She explained that there was an additional social worker had been added because of the expansion of the number of students in preschool to support the social emotional learning of early childhood education. I recommended that the administration find a measurement to identify the effectiveness of the Imagination Library, because she thought that the Imagination Library was a wonderful additive and was hoping to continue with that programming. So that was the suggestion. We also talked about, she talked about lead education, or lead assessment of students who were exposed to lead. And I inquired about, was that something consistent that we did even after preschool, knowing that the effects of lead on developmental delays is pretty high among our children. Mr. Lindy inquired about how and what measure is being used to demonstrate growth to kindergarten readiness, and Ms. Brooks will provide an update to preschool on preschool providers in January 2022. Our next presenter was Lanisha Simmons, manager for English Language Arts. She presented on the K-6 reading specialist. She identified that every elementary school with kindergarten and first grade now had a K-1 reading specialist. She talked about the professional development that comes with the reading specialist, the training. And she also talked about K-12 ELA continuing to provide educational awareness around our accelerated learning model. The action item in that presentation was Mr. Lenny expressed a desire to see the assessment information, and Ms. Campbell will provide that information to the board in the month of November 2021 at our next SAC meeting. And last but not least, Ms. Maroney provided an extensive report on college credit course pluses. She talked about CPS's pipeline of college programs. She presented goals to the increase the CCP options for students on the West Side, and she noted that there was more interest on the West Side for high school teachers to be credentialed in providing college credit plus instruction. One key aspect of her presentation was also around early college for 11th and 8th grade, 11th grade students at, and 8th grade students, I think it's 8th grade students at Spencer Center. And what she presented, there was that families would really prefer that their students stayed on campus so that that college credit plus could be brought to the school versus the students going to a college campus. There was a discussion on the interim superintendent's 90-day performance review, and that action item has actually been completed, that the committee has submitted a draft to the board to review for their recommendations. This is the SAC committee's report, and I present it as written.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? All right, hearing none. I need a motion to approve the Health and Safety, Policy and Equity Committee of the Whole and the Student Achievement and District Instructional Performance Committee reports.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? That was very, very well done. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for those updates. All right. May I have a motion to amend the agenda to include a resolution allowing the district to select a vendor that will partner with CPS in the recruiting process for our new superintendent?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Ms. Wagner, please call the roll.
Mrs. Bates,
Okay, so voting on. Oh, yeah, okay, we're amending it. Okay, aye.
Ms. Bolton,
Aye.
Mrs. Bowers, Mr. Lindy,
Yes.
Vice President Messer.
Yes, thank you. We have now added that officially to the agenda. Okay, we have an exciting report from our superintendent, continuing to share the joy at CPS in the 2021 school year that she so eloquently kicked off our district with, that incredible theme. So, Ms. Amat.
Yes, it is with great enthusiasm that I get to announce our very first CPS is Bright School highlight, Rockdale Elementary School, who is led by the student-centered principal, Dr. Jaren Finney, who will open up the presentation, and she brought two wonderful teachers with her. Thank you.
Good evening.
Evening.
Thank you, Board of Education and Interim Superintendent, for this delight and honor to come and speak on behalf of Rockdale and the wonderful things that we're doing this academic school year. Next slide, please. And we have Kylie Morrison that is going to speak more about our academics.
Hello, everyone. At Rockdale, we are energetically using our district curriculum, Wit and Wisdom, iReady, and Envisions. For Wit and Wisdom, we want our students to understand that words have meaning. Notice and wonder is key to helping our students think more critically, such as, I noticed that this is happening in the story, and I wonder why. Our essential questions maintain our focus. In kindergarten, our current focus is, what are our 5 senses? And in 6th grade, what makes a bud a survivor? My name is Tamika Chambers. I'm a 3rd grade teacher at Rockdale Academy. I teach math, and so I'm going to speak on our iReady, which is given to kindergarten through 5th grade, and our 6th graders are using Envision. If you come over to Rockdale, you'll see our walls talking. We have our data walls from our diagnostic test that our students took in the fall, and you'll see that we want them to grow, so there's a new tick mark for them to reach each time. So for fall, winter, and spring, we'll be ready for that. And we're going to move into our Stay Safe Rockdale video.
Presenting a video message from Rockdale 6th graders about what we can do to stay safe at school.
We are the 6th grade leaders at Rockdale Academy. We're not allowed for video just for you.
Rockdale Academy, our 6th grade leaders. What are some things we're doing at Rockdale to stay safe?
Stay 6 feet and social distance.
We wear our masks covering our nose and our mouth.
Washing our hands and hand sanitizer. When we're at recess, stay 6 feet apart and don't mix with other classes.
Great job to our 6th grade leaders who showed up and showed out today. We wanted to have some wonderful students who are our leaders, upcoming high schoolers, do a presentation talking about safety at Rockdale. We're taking many precaution measures to make sure that we keep our students and staff safe. And there are various ways that we can do so. We can do so by keeping our nose and mouth covered, as well as hand washing, hand sanitizing throughout the day, as well as staying 6 feet social distancing. So this video is going to be shown to all of our classes, and our students did an awesome job. Continue on, Rockdale, keeping yourself, one another safe. Have a good one. Our hashtag Rockdale Lives Matter movement started last year, where our goal is to get 100% of our students back in school. Our social work team, as well as our teachers, we're knocking on doors, we're visiting families, and we're having various opportunities at the school for parents to just get connected and feel like they belong in school and that we're doing everything to keep their child safe. I'm going to transition to our partnerships. We have wonderful partners with Rockdale that is helping us to make these dreams and initiatives come to life. We have a partnership with the Cincinnati Children's Hospital, Cincinnati Zoo, the Cincinnati Reds, the Ronald McDonald House, University of Cincinnati, Avondale Development Corp., Avondale Churches. Our lead agency is Activities Beyond the Classroom, Most Valuable Kids, Health Gap, UC Health, St. Aloysius, Clifton Cultural Arts Center, Free Store Food Bank, and the Cincinnati Police Department through their cadets program. Thank you to our partners. Rockdale, our Vision 2020 is global conservation. I hope you're ready for the next slide. We have many things going on at Rockdale. With us being a global conservation school, we have partnered with the Cincinnati Reds. And with the Cincinnati Reds Community Makeover, they selected our school where they did a woosah room for our staff to decompress. They also did a redo of our
Room room, where our students are able to take showers in the morning. Those that need hygiene, they have a dressing room. We have two. They're able to go in and get their uniforms. They also have snacks in there. We have staff that are able to do students' hair in there. So we're making sure that our students' basic needs are being met. And through the Cincinnati Reds Community Makeover, this became possible. Also, what we have is our very own urban learning garden. This right here is where dreams came true. We were told to dream big, and Rockdale, we dreamed the impossible. You're going to see a video of that forthcoming. Through our urban learning garden, we also are doing a community rebuild. You're going to see that flyer in future slides. We also have a nature club. We have an after-school program that's going to begin in October, where we're able to serve up to 50 students. We have a partnership also with the Sunlight Solar Panels, where they built solar panels above our school that is fueling our very own greenhouse that was donated from Cincinnati Children's Hospital. Also, we have Do Right that is helping us with Healthy Me, Healthy World for our students, providing health and nutrition for our students. Next slide, please. This is our Rockdale Invites You to the Community Garden Reveal. It's going to take place on Thursday, September the 30th. From 2:45 to 5 p.m., everyone's invited. Expect to come out and have fun and be wowed out of your mind. And next we want you to meet our very own new staff. Mrs. Morrison, followed by Ms. Chambers.
Our new staff this school year at Rockdale is Miss Hansey, 3rd grade ELA and Social Studies teacher, Miss Atkins, 4th grade Math and Science, Mr. Burton, 5th grade ELA and Science, Mr. Nagel, 6th grade Math and Science, and Miss Nelson, preschool autism teacher. To the side, these are pictures of our new staff.
We also have Miss Lau, who is our new music teacher, Miss Pleasant, who is our gym teacher, Mrs. Onan, who is our reading specialist for grades 3 to 6, Miss Colvin, our intervention specialist, Miss S, our paraprofessional, Mr. Sanders, our new ISS instructor, and then we have Miss Ransahoff, our 4 through 6 autism paraprofessional. So we are so glad to have them a part of our Rockdale family, and we are going to rock this year out.
And something we say from Rockdale is Rock Pride
Inside.
Thank you, Board of Education and Interim Superintendent Amont.
Thank you so much.
And also thank you to the Cincinnati Zoo Children's Hospital for making this possibility happen in the Reds.
All right. Comments, questions? Ms. Bowers.
Thank you, Dr. Fanny.
You're welcome.
I have a question. Congratulations on the Urban Learning Garden and Nature Club, especially, and the community garden. How many students actually participate in the community garden?
Great question. As of Friday, 297. We had a dedication for 9/11 where our students sung. We had a soloist, Ms. Chambers' daughter. And also we honored our veterans. So we had our preschool up to 6th grade out in the Urban Learning Garden on Friday.
And are they expected to be participating and showing people around the reveal?
Absolutely. Our
Good.
students will be a part of the reveal, giving tours.
Very good.
Yes.
All right. Any other comments or questions? Mr. Moroski.
Thank you, Vice President Messer. I just want to say hello to everyone from Rockdale. I wish I could be there in person. It's been fun running by your building. It's on my Friday route and watching things change and come together. And I just want to, as I'm wont to do, any opportunity I have, give a real shout out to all of our neighborhood schools. And I think Rockdale is a great testimony to what a neighborhood school is and can be, particularly reaching out to all the partners in the community that are a stone's throw away. And it really does just kind of feel like home around there. And so I just want to say kudos to y'all. And you've done so much work there, and it's so nice. And I wish I could be at the garden, but I'll be taking my mom away for her 80th birthday. So I will be there in spirit with you. But it's been a real joy sort of being a little fly on the wall every Friday, sort of watching things The building looks great. Y'all are doing great, and congratulations on our success.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Moroski.
Ms. Bolton?
Yes, thank you for the presentation. It's good to see you. 2 or 3 things. First, you guys are really leading the way on the whole CPS outside and agro and all kinds of gardening and what have you, and thank goodness for the zoo. I think part of what is being constructed where you are was taken from the College Hill Children's Hospital campus, so I should be a little angry with you. But since it's coming to you, Ms. Finney, you know, it's all right. But the other thing I'd like to make a point about for Rockdale, and it does rock, my interest is how many students, which is one of the programs you have, is the autism program. How many students within your student population are being, and have been for a number of years, it's been there quite some time, are part of the autism program?
Great question. So we have 3 classrooms that service children with autism, and all 3 of those classrooms were out for the event on Friday and participated.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Thank you, and thanks for all that effort throughout the many, many years of inclusion, and yet also keeping a safe and comfortable place for those kids. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. And I have to say, we've come a long way since I was approached at a zoo board meeting. What do you think? What would the appetite be for some gardening work done on that empty plot of land, and to see it come to where it is today? I hope the whole city turns out to see. I mean, this is going to be a national model. And I've heard people at the zoo talk about it. There's not another example in the nation that has the resources for what we're trying to do, to get kids outside, to get more connected to their food, get more connected to the environment. Solar panels, greenhouses. I mean, it's unbelievable. So everybody, please, it'd be nice if we could post that flyer. I mean, I hope that group of incredible children and all the adults around them that make the magic happen there see that this is a real example for this country. So thank you, and congratulations on all your work.
Thank you, Mr. Messer. Rob, can you show the video of the drone, please? Thank you.
All right, Ms. Mott, could you please present tonight's final presentation?
Absolutely. We have General Counsel Dan Hoying and Assistant Superintendent Susan Bunty, who will be doing a presentation on the vaccination policy mandate. Thank you.
Good evening. And advance to the next slide, please. I'm Dan Hoying. I'm the General Counsel of Cincinnati Public Schools. Here this evening to speak with you for a few minutes about a proposed mandatory vaccine policy for CPS employees. This presentation arose as an assignment from the Board Policy Committee on August 26th. We were given or asked to present on the implementation of a proposed policy, medical considerations. Dr. Grant Mussman is with us here from the City Health Department to provide a little bit of information about other organizations that have implemented vaccine mandates. And Stephanie Scott, our Assistant General Counsel, has done significant work on comparing other policies. Again, implementation considerations. Susan Bunty has been hard at work, as well as the talent team. And then a little bit of feedback from constituents and partners. Next slide, please. Cincinnati Public Schools has been supportive of vaccines from the time they were first approved to be issued. As you know, the school district was among the very first school districts in the state to offer vaccines for employees. There was a personal petition to the governor to make CPS the first public school in Ohio to offer vaccines. We've offered vaccination sites for employees for both the first and second doses, both at CPS schools and at mass vaccination sites like Duke Energy Center. We presently estimate, and this is an estimate because we have not collected vaccination information from employees to date. We estimate that approximately 70% of employees have been vaccinated. But again, I just stress that that's an estimate. We've also offered incentives through our wellness plan to employees who were willing to be vaccinated. Stephanie Scott again, and actually an intern in the Office of General Counsel, have done some work comparing other organizations that have implemented vaccine mandates. The most common mandate that we've seen, and this applies in, I think, 9 states plus Puerto Rico, are to require vaccines with the option of weekly testing for employees who are either unwilling or unable to be vaccinated. And that is the recommendation that the administration is making. If we move forward with vaccine mandate, is to offer an option for employees who aren't able or willing to get vaccinated to have weekly testing as an option. Since this list was put together on last week, the Biden administration, as you know, also issued new federal requirements that are coming for vaccination mandates. Significantly, OSHA, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, is expected within 30 to 60 days to announce a new emergency temporary standard that will apply to all employers, private included, that have 100 or more workers. Again, that standard is expected to have a weekly testing option. In addition, Head Start schools, of which we have numerous Head Start classrooms, are required to be vaccinated. Employees, federal employees and federal contractors. There's an executive order that was issued on September 9th requiring testing. Next slide, please. There are some school districts that require vaccines and do not offer weekly testing as an option. However, even in these organizations, there is an opt-out or an exemption available for religious exemptions or a medical exemption, somebody who's medically unable or not recommended to be vaccinated. Next slide, please. Locally, the city of Cincinnati is requiring vaccinations, again, with weekly testing as an option. 6 Cincinnati health systems announced vaccination mandates for their employees. Ohio State and Miami universities. There was some brief discussion of other options as opposed to mandates. This was discussed in the policy committee. For example, some school district, Indianapolis notably, have said that masks are required for unvaccinated employees. Masks are not required for vaccinated employees. Others have charged health insurance higher premium surcharges for employees. We have looked at that. That is something that some employers have implemented. Again, so if you didn't get vaccinated, you would be charged a health insurance premium. There's some rules we'd have to ensure that we were following in terms of with the Affordable Care Act. There's requirements of having affordability and you'd have to make sure that your plan is still affordable even with that surcharge. Here, we're very lucky or grateful to have Dr. Grant Mussman with us to answer some of the questions that the policy committee had with respect to medical and public health. So, Dr. Mussman, thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you, members of the board. Always a pleasure to come and answer what questions I can in support of our partnership. So I was asked a couple of questions that are here on this slide. And so the first one is, what do we know about the Delta variant? And we know a few things. I think most folks have seen a lot of it in the lay press, but we know that it's more contagious. It's more than twice as contagious as variants. It is spread very readily. We know that it well, we don't know. It might cause more severe illness than previous variants in unvaccinated people. We don't know that for sure. There's some suggestion that it does, but it's hard to tell because it's more infectious. So you can't just measure hospitalizations. You can't just measure other outcomes because, of course, it spreads easier. So it could just be causing more there. But there is some suggestion that it does have higher hospitalization rates and higher illness than previous variants. Unvaccinated people remain at very highest the highest risk of both getting the illness, getting sick with the illness, and transmitting the illness. And fully vaccinated people can actually get the Delta variant, and it is possible for them to spread it. We know that we have a surge going on right now. So we actually had our highest number of daily cases here in Cincinnati, period, including last winter, just over the weekend. So quite a lot of COVID out there in the community. We are at a high level of hospitalization regionally, although not quite as high as we were last winter. And we are still having daily deaths in the city of Cincinnati, but not as high as we were last winter. And those last pieces, probably vaccination has a lot. Benefit of 100% vaccination compliance. So Mr. Hoyne, I think, mentioned that somewhere around 70% is a good guess for how much your staff is vaccinated. So over the weekend, actually, the CDC reported on a large study showing that you're about 5 times more likely to get COVID if you are unvaccinated versus vaccinated. 10 times more likely to be hospitalized, 11 times more likely to die from it. So even 30% of the staff, the additional vaccination would cut down your number of cases with that 5 times number. Let's see. Do we believe that testing once a week will decrease transmission among adults? So this is a tough one. So we know that weekly testing has been used fairly effectively. Now, nursing homes are a much more controlled environment than the rest of the world. And I do think it's pretty clear that it's an inferior strategy to vaccination. Does it work at all? I don't know the answer to that. There have been high-profile surveillance programs, thinking of like the NFL. The NBA did the whole bubble thing, but they also had a surveillance program. And outbreaks in those, in the NFL in particular, happened. The White House was doing daily surveillance, and they had an outbreak that was pretty widely reported. So I think it's an open question how effective the surveillance testing is, whether weekly surveillance is effective. I just don't know the answer to that. And then, is it still necessary to wear masks if staff are vaccinated or being regularly tested? So, as I mentioned, if you do get, if you are vaccinated, it is still possible to become infected with the Delta variant. It does seem like vaccination protects against that infection, so pretty significant reduced risk, but not like it was before. It's still possible to get it, and you do still shed virus. Now, more and more data is showing that the amount of virus that you shed, it rapidly falls off after 5 to 7 days or so. So it's not clear that you're as infectious. Also, there's some suggestion that you're probably not as infectious because the amount of virus that you're shedding goes down more rapidly. So yeah, you're less infectious because you're less likely to get it. You're probably less likely to shed quite as much because it falls off faster. And then is that virus, how competent is that virus that's been attacked by the host, before it gets out, is an open question. So masks have been shown to be effective as a non-pharmaceutical intervention, even at mediocre rates of mask usage. So we know that it protects against spread from infected individuals. So yeah, I would say it's still a good idea for folks to wear a mask, especially while Delta is spiking where it is, even if you're vaccinated.
Thank you, Dr. Mussman. So now we're going to transition to, if approved, what this policy could potentially look like in terms of procedure. Next slide, please. So if approved this evening, we are ready to do the following. Tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., the portal would be open for submission. In a few moments, you'll have a screenshot of what that portal will look like. The COVID-19 hotline and the ITM help desk will also be able and open to support inquiries. As we've talked about before, on the 25th, we will offer another vaccine clinic at Woodward High School for those staff members who wish to have a vaccination provided by our Cincinnati Health Department from 9 to 3. Then on 10/1, the policy would take effect. So that would be the deadline for all of our employees to submit their first dose into the employee portal system, and also the deadline for all of our co-located partners to sign off on an MOU affirming compliance. Also on the 4th, our employees would begin submitting those weekly COVID test results. And those include both the folks who are unable to vaccinate due to medical or religious reasons and those unwilling to vaccinate. And finally, if you follow through, if we offer that first vaccination clinic on the 25th, then by November 1st, we would have to have proof of that second dose. Just an important note that this would become a condition of employment for all future employees or those employees returning from leave if passed tonight. Next slide, please. So we recognize that it's important to gain documentation of vaccination. So our employees would submit information via a secure online portal. We use this regularly now for our employee paychecks or other means of communicating information to employees. So we also, our co-located partners, as I mentioned previously, would sign those MOUs. We also recognize that it's incredibly important to provide support to both our employees and partners. Again, that vaccination clinic on the 25th is very important. And we'll have our hotline up and running. Employee care center folks are being trained first thing tomorrow morning. There's a website that's also launching tomorrow morning. And then there are emails going out and robocalls that our employees will receive. Next slide, please. So again, for the board's consideration, it's what happens to those folks who are unable to vaccinate or unwilling to vaccinate. So one of the things that you all have to, as a potential decision-making point tonight is for those unable to vaccinate, which might include those approved with medical or religious exemptions. The suggestion is that they would be required to undergo weekly testing and then submit results to CPS via that same secure portal. Also, something to consider is for those unwilling to vaccinate. So they also would undergo weekly testing perhaps and submit their, again, weekly results into that same portal. Next slide, please. This is what the portal actually looks like. So when an employee logs in with their secure employee ID, they would see a screenshot such as this one. They would select I am fully vaccinated and then attach their scanned copy of their vaccination card and then submit. You can also see the other options there of what they can pull down in that Dropbox, and then they will follow those guidelines throughout in order to create their submission. And now Mr. Hoyne is going to come back and share some feedback from our constituents.
Thank you, Ms. Bonte. So just to conclude on the last slide here, board members probably know that the union groups or some of our union groups got together and prepared a proposed MOU for our consideration. We had the opportunity to meet with the union groups, representatives from all the union groups on Friday, and had a very productive meeting, heard kind of their concerns. Essentially, most of what, almost everything that's in the union's proposed memorandum, I should say, this has been signed off on by all unions except for ASHME. ASHME representatives also confirmed they're very supportive of vaccines. They have been from the beginning, but want the opportunity to discuss, based on what the board decides tonight, effects bargaining essentially over the board's decision. With respect to the MOU, again, we went through kind of each and every line item. The unions provided, among other things, that everyone should continue to be required to wear a face mask. That if someone has an adverse reaction to a COVID vaccine, that they would have the opportunity to use paid sick leave. We agree with that. That there should be religious and disability exemptions. Ms. Bonte talked about that. Probably the most important to the unions that we spoke to was that there be an option for unwilling employees to have the ability to submit to weekly testing. And so we had a discussion about that as well. And again, that is our recommendation for the board as it considers this policy. Ms. Bonte, Dr. Mussman, and I are glad to answer any questions. Thank you.
Let's start over here. Ms. Bolton.
Thank you. Several things. I just want to see if I clearly understood this. The policy that we are presenting tonight and what you all were talking about is a policy that says everyone will be vaccinated unless they are able to be exempted for religious reasons or medical reasons.
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay. And if they are exempted, there are ways that they can be accommodated. And one of them certainly is the weekly testing.
That's right.
And in some cases, if they're medically unable to do it, then that the laws fall into place of us being able to accommodate them beyond that. Is that?
We would propose weekly testing as the accommodation.
Okay, as the only one? Or whatever. Okay.
Sure, yes, as probably the most common.
All right. And if you're unwilling to be vaccinated, you've said if you're among the unwilling, then, and this is when the policy is emphasizing, that is a requirement of employment, and not meeting that employment requirement, they would not be able to remain in employment at CPS. That's what the policy is saying.
The policy has an exemption for medical and religious, but it's our recommendation to also allow an unwilling employee to submit weekly testing.
Okay, so the administration is saying something different than the discussions at the board and in the policy committee meetings.
The policy committee, the draft that was considered did not expressly include an option for unwilling employees to have a vaccine or have a.
And if I'm correct, the one slide had the two options. So it's either we could say it was a condition of the job, or we could say you can if you choose for any other reason. I saw on the slide.
That's right.
But I saw that they were giving the option for the board to make that decision.
And yes, the board making that decision. So the issue is, the administration is suggesting if you're unwilling to get a vaccination, it is not a requirement of employment.
That the alternative would be that you could submit weekly testing.
See, okay, that is a very different place then where, and I don't know that that's, the board hasn't voted and we don't know where it is. And the policy committee still had a lot of questions that needed to be answered. So I'm not suggesting that was what it was. But I'm saying that is a dichotomy of what I think has been being discussed. So that's
Yeah,
okay.
so let me just make sure that I'm correct. So when we actually get to the policy, we will discuss if we want to give the out for people who just say they don't want it. They don't have a medical necessity. They don't have a religious exemption. It'll be up to the board tonight to decide, are we going to make it a hard line? Are we going to allow them to then opt into the weekly testing? So we'll be discussing and deciding that when we get to the policy.
Right. And so just to be clear so we don't have to have the discussion yet again. In this presentation, the administration is suggesting that we are accommodating the unwilling.
So I think what I'm asking, I guess what we're hearing is, would the administration, Ms. Amat, like to make a recommendation based on their standing or, understanding and research, which direction we should go?
Absolutely. If you're asking administration for their recommendation, it would be just that's what's posted. This is also coming from talking to our labor unions and having conversations with them as well. So this is our recommendation. However, it's your decision.
So the recommendation, can you state to allow the weekly testing or to make it a condition?
The recommendation is to give the alternative for the weekly test.
Ms. Bowers.
And I would like to also state, and I don't know if we have that data, but I believe we already have 70% of our staff already tested. So we're talking about 30% of the population, and then to offer that alternative.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Bowers.
Yes, thank you. And I think I've stated this before about the undue burden for partners in our community, especially our mental health partners, that we are struggling to find mental health therapists, and this will be an undue burden. Although I do know some agencies that have selected to not mandate, but to allow the mandate and or the weekly mandatory testing. My question to this group, or to Ms. Fonte, how would a partner who's doing weekly testing give that information to the district for staff that have not been vaccinated? I know you talked about an employee portal and all that, but how would that partner provide that information?
So what we discussed, once there's a decision made this evening, whether or not, and on the slide, I would like to point out that there are two bullets. So one talks about weekly testing, and the second one says if there's no option for weekly testing, then that would lead to termination of employment. So once that decision is made tonight, then we would have a conversation with our partners, and then they would sign off on an MOU. I did personally talk to Susan Shelton at Mindpiece just to let her know that this discussion was happening, so that she is aware.
Perfect. Thank you.
Ryan, can you hear me?
Ms. Bates, what was it? Ms. Bates, was it?
Just quickly, I mean, that all may be moot with the new federal standards, so.
Yeah. Mr. Lindy.
I'm done.
Thanks, Mr.
And Mr. Moroski, I'll get you next.
I wanted to say just a couple things. First was a thank you. I think I know I asked a bunch of questions in the policy committee meeting. I requested we have somebody from the medical side here to answer questions. I feel like all those questions have been addressed. I really appreciate it. I also asked about relationships with labor groups that they were asking for. I really appreciate that. I also asked for the administration to come with an opinion on like what you think the right thing to do is. And I really want to note that happened, and I want to say how much I appreciate it. I think what I'd love to hear is more about what the why is behind it. Can you just share more about, why give the unwilling option as opposed to the harder line?
I will start, and then I will ask Mr. Hong to join in. One being, as we shared with you earlier, what other districts, other states are doing. So we're not the first one out there doing this, right? So it is a pretty common way to allow for the safety of getting vaccinations and getting an alternative. The other part of this is with the kind of incentives and awareness that we brought in the district with our partnership with the health department. I would actually say we're over 70% because 70% is only those who got vaccinated through our systems, but a lot of people have been vaccinated by their private physicians. So there's a high number of folks vaccinated. Thirdly, I'm concerned about losing staff members. We have 10% of our staff right now is vacant. So we currently are working very hard to fill those positions. The last time we closed those, it was because of staffing. So with already being down 10% of our current staff, and then to have a policy that will require people to be vaccinated, I'm going to assume, I'm making an educated guess here, that we will lose more employees. And lastly, just talking to our staff and hearing from those staff members and partners like MindPeace. But ultimately, when we looked at our numbers and the practices that we currently have in place, we are safe as we are conducting school every day and we are open. So I feel confident if we can encourage more people to get vaccinated, more people to be aware of the science about vaccinations, and then allowing the alternative, we can continue to keep schools open, which is ultimately administration's first priority. In closing, I will ask Mr. Hoying to add anything that I have missed out based on our conversation.
No, I would just, in addition to the staffing concerns, would say that I'll say the same thing I said at the policy committee meeting. As between moving forward unilaterally and moving forward with our unions joining us in this effort, I prefer the latter. So.
Mr. Lindy. Yeah, just to respond quickly, I appreciate that. I'll just share for the interim superintendent, I'm particularly compelled by the argument you made around staffing. That the choice we have may not be between everybody gets it or some people get tested instead. It's between some people get it tested instead and we're able to keep our schools open.
Yes.
Or a world where we require it of everybody and have to close schools again because we don't have the staff to keep them open. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Moroski.
Thank you, Vice President Messer. And thank you, General Counsel, Superintendent, Assistant Superintendent, Dr. Mussman, for pulling together this presentation in what seems like short order. It seems like just yesterday the policy committee was meeting. So I have read and reviewed the memorandum of understanding from the Cincinnati Federation of Teachers that they put together with the 5 other labor groups. And if I heard everything correctly, it sounds as if Counsel's office is in agreement largely with this. And the one piece that is standing out the most that I'm hearing is the piece about the weekly testing. And I certainly understand where Ms. Bolton's come from as a proponent of this policy and the vaccine requirement. I certainly understand and appreciate where you're coming from, Ms. Bolton. I don't particularly have too terribly that big of an issue with it because I do fear that we may lose more teachers without it. I also, if I may be blunt, which I'm not usually scared to be, getting weekly testing is kind of a pain in the butt. And I would be interested to see, how long, folks go before they say, just give me the shot. I'm tired of doing this. I think it's a relatively small amount of folks, and the fact that we have, it'd be nice if we had all of the labor unions on here. I really, really, truly wish we did. the fact we've gotten this far, I think is significant. And I feel like that weekly testing piece, getting hung up on that would be a shame, and not moving forward tonight with this policy. I think with the vaccination plus the masks, plus employees who are rallied around this, and there's something to be said about that peer-to-peer piece. There's something to be said about the staff that are excited about the policy and those who may be reticent that choose the weekly testing. There's something to be said about their peers saying, oh, vaccine, get the vaccine, wear the mask. There's something to be said about that. And it's going to be an overwhelming majority of folks that do have the vaccine. And this is just another tool we can use to keep kids alive and safe, and our doors open. So I would just like to add my 2 cents that I agree with the general counsel and the superintendent's recommendation. And again, with this MOU, the 8 bullet points in this MOU, 9 bullet points in this MOU, I'm happy to see it. And it feels like, this year and a half has found, us and staff and teachers, et cetera, on many different sides of the same page. And it feels like we may be getting close to being on the same page. And I think that's important. I just wanted to kind of make that known before we move to a vote. And I'm really, really, really disappointed and upset that I cannot be there to vote tonight. As this has certainly been a labor of love in our committee, thanks to Ms. Bolton's assignment back in May. But I'm hoping that we can pass this.
Okay, there are questions or comments?
Yeah, this is kind of technical and procedural, but our teachers and any other employees are held to contracts. So they just can't up and leave because there are repercussions when you leave during the contract period, correct?
So for contract teachers, there is a requirement. However, one of the bullet points in the MOU that applies mostly to teachers, doesn't really apply to the other unions, that somebody who did decide to leave, resign, and seek other employment, that the board would not challenge their professionalism with the Office of Professional Conduct. And the thinking there is that had we announced a vaccine mandate, on June 1, a teacher still could have made the decision to leave without consequence. Having announced the vaccine mandate after the deadline that we would, in this MOU at least, and it would be our recommendation not to.
Ms. Bolton.
Yes, thank you. Just 2 things. First of all, you were using on one of the charts the termination word. And I think in the MOU and also what we've talked about, it actually should be more resignation. On one of your charts, you used the word termination. And in the MOU, and I think in our discussions, it's been teachers or staff members being allowed to resign. Okay, so it's not that they are terminated, it's they are leaving because of that. It's not like I think that's very important. That terminology is very important if they seek other employment. It isn't that we have fired them. So I just wanted to be clear on that one. The other is I am very concerned about that we have 10% vacancies district-wide. Is that our 10% that we usually carry, or is there something new this year that we haven't hired?
No, this is actually, we are better than we have been in prior years. We have a lot of schools filled with long-term staff.
Well, I know that.
Right. So that's what we are working very hard to have the very best educators in front of our kids and licensed professionals. And we actually have filled the vacancy at the highest rate compared to prior years.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Messer.
Yes, ma'am.
Unfortunately, I'm going to have to drop off the broadcast. But I wanted to wait until the resolutions came up so that I could be a part of that discussion. But I'm because I have to leave, I just wanted to say that I really appreciate all the work that has been put into this policy and on the part of the policy committee and administration, and good questions. I think Ms. Bolton's questions are great questions, and we have to be absolutely clear. I want to just make one statement, because we often refer to staff as teachers exclusively. We're talking about a large number of people that crosses over. It includes not only teachers, but paras and cafeteria workers and plant operators and all that. And what we want is for people, we want to be as safe as possible. So as I leave out, I just want to say that I am in full support of the approval and passage of the policy. I think it's a great start. I think that we will get a great response to what is written currently. And I look forward to us being the safest school district that I know of. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to leave. And I appreciate just being able to say that.
Thank you, Ms. Jones.
Thanks.
And I'll just add my comments. I mean, I can't even believe that we're even having this conversation in mid-September with as many people that have died, the mess we've been through to keep our kids in school, us learning how detrimental it is for the kids not to be at school, and then people who sign up who say they truly care about kids and they're in this for the kids won't get vaccinated. It's not about you anymore. Get your ass vaccinated. Now, that being said, I get it. We can't run our business educating children without people in the seats. That's the only thing that gives me like a little bit of like, okay, give them that weekly test. But we saw what happened to children when they weren't in the classroom, a variety of things. Not the least of which was our scores show that they lost academic performance. And I think we have to do everything we can to make sure that we don't leave the classroom again. And what I know, at least from some people in this district, is some of the positive cases are the adults in the building. And yet, our little preschoolers put their masks on before they go in. I see them rubbing. They're reminding people out in public, hey, over your nose. It's the most beautiful thing. So for once, maybe us adults who haven't quite gotten there, watch these little children, think about their futures, the people around them, and maybe we can all get vaccinated. So thank you for your work on this. I know this was a lot of work. Thank you, Dr. Mussman, for your continued partnership and giving us your time this evening. And I know you have an extra special place in your heart for CPS because you're personally connected. And always glad to have our CPS family members also throughout the community making a difference. So thank you. All right. Okay, we are now at the topic on the agenda for hearing our public. Consistent with the state's direction to minimize public gatherings, especially here during a spike, we are convening this meeting with video conference to include the opportunity for our public to make comments. Each speaker will be given 1.5 minutes and will direct all comments to the presiding officer. Consistent with the board's bylaws, the board has the ability to limit the hearing of the public on any single issue and will exercise the right to do so if needed. Couple of quick guidelines here. We respectfully ask all employees of the district to direct all questions, concerns, and comments regarding our return to in-person learning to your building representative, your leadership of your building, or the district safety hotline. Also, once you've been granted access to the meeting and invited in, please make sure you click on the camera icon to go interactive. And just a reminder from before, please provide your name, your affiliation to the district, your school community, your topic, and your contact information if there's a question you'd like to have a response to. This request is consistent with work protocol, and we appreciate your compliance. Again, you will have 1.5 minutes to speak, and we'd like to ask everyone to refrain from discussing any personnel items. And we are a public organization. There are children watching, so please be respectful in your comments to whoever you're speaking. We have 7 speakers, I believe. I'll hand it over to our facilitator.
Our first speaker this evening is Carrie Kinkle, followed by Ozzie Davis, followed by Ruth DeBono. Go ahead, Ms. Kinkle.
like to request that the board definitely move forward with the policy for vaccination. It sounds like all of you are in agreement for that, but I just would like to offer that as a parent in the district and a community at large member. I've been reading some articles, LA's second largest school district just mandated all vaccines, and also for their youth, their students as well. So I wondered if you guys are going to be putting that in the near future out for policy, whether all students will be required for vaccination as well, and what that might look like. Second thing that I wanted to speak on was the dress code. I'm still having some confusion with why across the board, citywide, it isn't uniform. And as my 5th grader had said to me, why is the onus on me, mommy, if a boy can't control himself with touching my shoulder? So I think that's something to think about. And then lastly, I just was curious as to know about possible outside eating areas still, maybe tenting or the thing of the like when students aren't comfortable eating inside, and they would have the option of having an out day for themselves. But I don't know what that looks like as far as safety measures go. So if somebody could address that or email me back, I'll leave my email and I would appreciate it. Thank you so much for all the time and consideration that has gone into figuring out what to do about this masking and vaccine mandate. I know it's been a lot of time, a lot of stuff with legal stuff, a lot of stuff with your unions and your stakeholders, your teachers. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a great evening.
Our next speaker is Ozzie Davis, followed by Ruth DeBono, followed by Ray Nephew. Go ahead, Mr. Davis.
Greetings, school board. As you know, I love and honor you and continue praying for your very best of leadership. Tonight, I want to start with celebrating the administration, specifically District Athletic Director Josh Harden and Deputy Superintendent, Assistant Superintendent Shauna Murphy, for supporting the development of all levels coaches clinic that consisted of 6 Division I assistant basketball coaches, all Black. Shout out to Hughes, West High, Woodward, and Withrow that took advantage of the clinic. As a proud Rockdale alum and former 2-decade LSDMC member, worst thing about my school board service was losing my seat on the Rockdale LSDMC. I say to you, rock pride inside, and I look forward to seeing you at the reveal. Finally, I say rest in peace, big brother Linwood Brattle. The Battle family is legendary as they represent the main vein of Black excellence in this city, West End to Avondale, and have been examples of the bar to excellence my entire life. I thank you for your example, and I send condolences to JC, Dorothy, Monica, and the entire Battle family. We lost an icon, and my soul is at half-mast.
Thank you, Mr. Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Our next speaker is Ruth DeBono, followed by Ray Nephew, followed by Sharonda Seiler. Go ahead, Ms. DeBono.
Hi, I'm Ruth DeBono. I am a senior at Walnut Hills High School, and I am in the Young Activist Coalition. Firstly, thank you for your discussions about keeping schools safe and consideration of vaccine policies for teachers. And I, of course, want to mention that these conversations about returning to school safely are incredibly important, but cannot be complete without the mention of the presence of SROs and punitive discipline in our schools. Punitive discipline and SROs in our schools harm students every single day. We have clear data that shows that SROs are harming children. We've talked about it many times before, so I don't think I need to, repeat every single statistic, but about 2 students every single school day are being entered into the criminal legal system as a direct result of the SROs in our schools. Schools cannot be safe for any students, especially Black and brown students, disabled students, and other marginalized groups of children who are disproportionately targeted by police when there are police officers in their schools. Not only is the presence of police in schools harmful, but so is the punitive discipline such as expulsions, suspensions, and in-school suspensions, which has been shown by the civil rights data collection from data directly reported by CPS to be largely disproportionate in its effects on students of color. Conversations with SROs about what they fear their role is in schools is not comparable to our clear research, community support, and concrete data. Schools cannot be considered safe with police officers in schools, and by ignoring this very real data directly from CPS and the board is showing a complete disregard for this.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Ray Nephew, followed by Sharonda Seiler. Go ahead, Mr. Nephew.
Board, there is nothing to be gained and much to be lost with a forced mandate.
This district will open itself to charges of fraud, battery, and medical and punitive damages when people are forced to receive the injection BioNTech, which Pfizer is still administering under the EAU for blanket liability protection, when these people thought they were getting the approved Comirnaty version, which does not have liability protection for Pfizer. Mandating institutions will then assume the liability, since the FDA and Pfizer itself have in writing that the two injections are legally distinct entities. Also, there is no rational mathematical gain cost benefit analysis to this. The CDC itself is admitting these injections are losing double-digit percentages on their effectiveness every month, and all 5 pharmas used abortion line HEK 293 in their development, religiously offensive and immoral. Also, we have not even talked about how in this approval process, the FDA used pre-Delta variant data, and they skipped for the first time ever 3 crucial steps in the pre-approval process. Pfizer's own schedules were not scheduled to end until 2023. And of course, I'm sure you know we have variants 5 and 6, Mu and Lambda, they're on us. And if you don't keep up with your shots, you will become one of the enemy. There's no long-term data on the effects of these shots. And if the tester cannot tell me the cycle threshold, the testing lab, and the technician.
Thank you, Mr. Nephew. Our next speaker is Sharonda Seiler, followed by Farrar Noir.
Good evening, everyone. I'm actually a parent of a Walnut Hills student. My concern at this point right now is what are we doing to support our students who actually are being quarantined for those 10 days? Because last year when they got quarantined, they were actually able to log into their classes virtually and get help. Well, this year they're telling the students to follow Schoology. Well, my daughter, I'm actually sitting in urgent care with my daughter right now so that she can get a rapid test so she can go back to school. But she's also severely asthmatic. So when cold season hits, she gets another cold, her asthma flares up. I now have to pull her out of school again, leave her home for a few days, get another test, and she's falling behind on schoolwork because there's not enough support to support these children when they're at home. She's at home on her laptop trying to follow Schoology, and she's confused. So what are we going to do this school year, because they're not virtual anymore? What are we going to do to support them going forward? That's all I have.
Thank you, Ms. Seiler. Our last speaker is Farrar Noir.
If I can figure this out. Sorry. I was at home and had to leave so I'm on my mobile. But I just wanted to ask about the flu vaccine, and while you passed the mandate for the COVID, that maybe we could also mandate the staff has the flu vaccine. As we know, the flu kills more children every year than the COVID-19 has in 18 months. And I think that would be a lot of safety if we also instituted everyone have the flu vaccine, especially going into a mild flu season supposedly last year. Now this year we may be getting hit hard with the flu, so we do think that would be important in saving lives of teachers and staff. And we've never done that before, but I think that should be looked into if we're going to mandate gene therapy on our entire staff. Secondly, I would ask that no one's talked about natural immunity, and if any of the staff has just recently had COVID-19, and they are supposed to be waiting 90 days, I think, at least, from their doctor, that maybe we should have some type of an exemption for those people. And I know several, I don't even feel safe thinking about all these vaccinated employees right now that are getting COVID. So maybe just test everyone weekly. But yeah, I just don't want the Trump vaccine. I'm sorry. My president and vice president told us not to trust it. And I think there's a lot of skepticism. So you guys have a good night. Thank you.
I have one more speaker. Drew Warndorf is our last speaker this evening.
Yeah, hi, thank you.
Good evening, members of the board. First of all, thank you for your work you continue to do to serve our communities and families. I do want to be clear that I am both a CPS employee and a parent of 2 CPS students
If we
at
could
Jeter
get you to
Montessori.
click on the camera icon, please.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Perfect.
I'm in a unique situation to see how policy is both implemented and communicated. I want to bring up the issues I've observed related to CPS's close contact policy. Students who are deemed close contacts are put on a 10-day in-school quarantine where their symptoms are monitored. Should they present symptoms in this window, they're sent home, unable to return regardless of a negative COVID test for 10 days. This was just the case for my pre-K student who on day 9.5 developed a cough, as most pre-K students do. I brought her to her pediatrician who gave her a PCR test and she was negative. The school basically told me that it didn't matter what her results were and she cannot come back for 10 days. This included her first grade sister, who is now considered a close community contact, despite the fact that her baby sister was in fact negative for COVID. We cannot assume that every single cold is COVID. We have to give parents the option to test and return their students to school when they are asymptomatic with a negative test. Additionally, just some policy exposure. So when this was implemented, what is the instructional plan for students who are quarantined? What is the absence plan? Who is feeding these children during their 10-day quarantine? What about parents who are paying for pre-K? How will they afford childcare and tuition at the same time? Will they be reimbursed? What communication is available to administration and nurses when symptoms or cases present?
Okay. Thank you to all of our callers for participating in tonight's hearing of the public. All right. Fellow board members, do we have any kudos this evening? Kudos? Ms. Bates, how about some retirements?
Yes, just a few. From our certificated personnel, we have Walter R. Davey, who was a substitute teacher. And from our civil service personnel, we have William Connolly and Eva McGowan, who are also announced their retirement. So we thank these professionals for their service to our children and wish them well in their future life.
Thank you. All right, moving on to board matters. Oh, sorry. Mr. Lindy.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. This is just a quick announcement for Jewish members of our CPS community. As a holiday last week for the Jewish New Year, I wanted to wish all of you a happy 5782 and hope it is a year of health for your families and Shana Tova. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, board matters. First topics here from Mr. Moroski, COVID-19 vaccine requirement policy.
Thank you, Vice President Messer. Yeah, I put this on here simply because I knew we were big vote tonight, but after the presentation from the General Counsel's office and the back and forth we had, I don't know if we need to still have it, but I'll just leave it at that and open it up for folks. I mean, I think I've made my case, and it sounds like if nothing else, people feel that there's some sense of urgency. So I'll just pause, and if anybody has anything to state before we move to the vote, I thought it would be good to have on here. And if not, since we just chatted about it, so be it.
I think you're right. I think we did kind of get a lot of that in there. Ms. Bates?
I have some just some minor changes to the policy. I don't think this requires it going back to the committee, but in the very first line, effective for 2021-22 school year, sounds like this policy is only good for 1 year. So what I would recommend is saying effective beginning with the 2021-22 school year. So this would be ongoing if that's agreeable to the rest of the board. I just think that would be a better way to present the policy, so it's ongoing and we don't have to review it again next year unless it's appropriate. And then in the first paragraph it says require all district employees to receive a COVID-19 vaccine And I think it would be better to say require all to be fully vaccinated, because a vaccine can be one vaccine and not the booster and so on. So just a little more specific. And then somewhere in here, and we could say DPS, and perhaps put it at the very end, DPS shall follow federally mandated standard vaccines. So when Biden's mandates become mandated, become required, that we already have it in our policy, and that could supersede other parts of our policy, and that also, is, if it's fait accompli, we really don't need the, in my opinion, the provision to allow people who don't want to become vaccinated to receive testing, because in a few weeks or months, that may not even be an option.
Yeah,
Board, I'd like to make those minor additions.
I welcome all of those. I'm just curious if from the general counsel, if that's something we need to do as an amendment when we get to resolutions, or if we could just kind of, pending what other members think, do that now, because none of those, I mean, they're significant, sure, but not substantive enough to me, at least, that we couldn't just bring them up, or do we need to do amendments when we get to resolutions?
Mr. Hoying is on his way to the podium.
I think generally if the mover and the seconder accepts friendly amendments, they can be added without amendment. If they can be added, does that make sense?
Okay. Yep.
Thank you.
I'll give this to Ms. Wagner, and perhaps by the time you vote on it, can we get these amendments in the written copy? Is that possible? Do we have somebody from staff here that can make some quick changes?
Yeah.
Should I give them to you?
Yeah.
Okay. While we're working through that, Ms. Bowers.
Yes, Board Member Bates, I guess I'm not clear on the federal mandate. I thought that included in the president's federal mandate that was inclusive of weekly testing. Was the most recent that I heard. Am I missing something?
I think she's saying that as that could evolve, go ahead and proactively.
But I would prefer that the weekly testing be added to this. I don't want to assume or move anything for this multiple reasons of partner workforce, superintendent's concerned about staffing. I don't, yes, Board Member Bates.
Yeah.
Could you give me clarity, because I thought I understood the president to say the mandated testing and or weekly testing. Did you hear something different than what I thought I heard?
Well, my addition is to follow federally mandated standards.
Mm-hmm.
So if that's a federally mandated standard, that would be covered.
Okay, right. Okay.
But I don't want to, my opinion, I don't want to add that. But if it's a standard, we follow it.
I would prefer to see it in writing, in my opinion. I
See
get
what?
to see that actually in writing, what was presented by the administration tonight. I want to see that in this policy. I hear what you're saying, but I
Right.
want to see it in writing.
Well,
That's my preference.
And
Yeah,
we
yeah.
can discuss that
Okay.
and see how many,
Okay.
whatever the board's wishes are.
Thank you, Ms. Bolton.
Yeah, what the administration is presenting is not what the policy text is. There are two different things on the table. There's an administrative recommendation, and then there's the proposed board policy. So you'd have to amend the board policy to speak to whatever it is you want to add or change. I'm curious to know, can someone tell me right now, if possible, I'm uninformed on this, what is President Biden's current proposal that OSHA was going to be enforcing. And when does it go into effect?
Yeah, President Biden has announced vaccination mandates on several different fronts. One was the occupational safety and health that would apply to private employers with 100 or more workers. That would require a vaccine or a weekly test. And that emergency temporary standard is expected to be published in 30 to 60 days. Federal employees, federal contractors is an executive order that was published on September 9th with guidance expected on September 16th. That's the end of this week, I believe. And the exceptions that are provided in there are, quote, only as required by law. So it's expected that that will not have an option for weekly testing except for individuals with a religious or medical exception. With respect to Head Start schools, again, not specific yet as to whether, or that I could see, not specific yet as to whether that would allow for a weekly test or not.
So the last thing you just mentioned was about schools. Could you repeat that?
Yeah, Head Start schools. So
Yep.
there was a requirement. There's also, he announced that the mandate would apply to federal Head Start programs, of which we have classrooms that are federal Head Start or students who are funded by Head Start dollars, that those employees in those classrooms would be required to be vaccinated. I was not able to tell whether that would allow for a weekly opt-out or not.
So then the president has not said anything about public schools.
For the most part, according to what I've seen, the president is still leaning on states to make those decisions, and announced which states had required public schools to be employees to be vaccinated and which had not yet, encouraging those who had not to move forward with state mandates.
But don't we have over 100 employees? Wouldn't we fall under that as a public school system?
The state and federal employers aren't covered by OSHA specifically.
That's why I would have some concern about the addition. I welcome that kind of addition to the degree that we keep in step with the nation, but the president is even recognizing this responsibility falls to us. Except for Head Start. You wonder too with the Head Start piece, the amount of federal dollars that we live on, and just like federal contractors. I'm sure it will evolve soon enough, but I just wanted to get that clarification because I didn't know yet where he was on schools.
So I think to more explicitly lay it out versus referring to the federal law until that's covered under, or until schools are directly and explicitly covered. Is that what I'm hearing? To go ahead and spell out kind of what the option is. Okay. Okay.
Say that again.
So I'm just trying to put this all together. So that I was tracking with the federal because I thought we were included, maybe like some in that 100 employees or more, but as that is not included, that we go ahead and if we choose to allow the weekly testing option, that we go ahead and include that in the policy is what I'm hearing. Ms. Bates.
So our Head Start teachers or our teachers with Head Start students in our schools will have different rules than all the other teachers. Yes, because the Head Start teachers are required.
Sounds like that's still a question.
It may, yeah, but it might be. But I guess my point is I would rather not have different rules for different sets of teachers, because in the Montessori schools, I would think all of our Montessori preschool classes have some Head Start students in it. So the 3 to 6 teachers will most likely be required to be vaccinated, but the 6 to 9 and 9 to 12 would have that option. And that's that's, I think, very kind of confusing, I'd rather, if we're going to have a policy, that the policy covers all of our teachers and not different rules for different teachers.
Ms. Bowers.
Ms. Bolden can go. I'm just going to say
Okay,
this.
okay, Ms.
That's all.
Bolden.
And it's certainly my preference to pass something this evening. But it also is, I won't say it's unprecedented, but I will say that it is unusual that there's this, what was worked through board, and not just policy committee, but multiple discussions. And that's cool, because we want to hear what the administration, I'm the one that asked them in that meeting, how are you going to implement this? Well, you just told us you're not implementing this particular policy. You're asking another policy be crafted, which is cool. That's reasonable. But I'm starting to think that we may not even be ready.
I have a quick question. I'm still confused on why you think the administration, what I saw was there was an option that they were saying we could go either way based on how the board then votes. But I think what they were saying is because there is a fear of staffing shortage, and I will frankly say, I asked teachers in my orbit who were all pro-vax, but they said, you put this on there, we're going to lose. One said, we're losing 5 of our most essential teachers. Another one said, oh, it's double that. So I totally get that piece, but I did not hear the administration say they were going to go this way or this way. I saw the slide that says there's 2 options. What I heard is they'll do it.
Thank you for that clarity. That's exactly correct.
But you did say we are recommending.
Yes, the board asked for a recommendation.
I did ask for that question, as we should be from our administration.
Exactly, and I'm just saying that recommendation is different than the ask, which is, and I'm saying that's fine, and I think it was my question about how this is going to be implemented. They're suggesting that the direction this has been going and hasn't reached its conclusion until anybody votes on it is different than where we were. So I think that's fine. I'm just saying, if that's the issue, then do we, and this is my question, do we vote on, when we get there, do we vote on the policy that's proposed and it goes down? And then do we then need to craft a different policy, or is what Ms. Bates is suggesting amending this from the floor? And how that happens, because we've done that any number of times. And in order to pass it tonight, it would seem to me that we would have to be amending the existing proposal.
Mr. Hoyne, if you could make your way to the podium. And then Ms. Mott.
I just want to be clear, whatever decision the board makes, we are prepared to follow the procedures, whether you have the alternative or not. We are prepared to go either way. We have a great team. Thank you.
Thank you. And then my question is, do we have to vote on the one that's been proposed, or can it be revised if the board is interested in adding the caveat for those who refuse?
I believe a sentence that could be added, it could say, employees or co-located partners who are unable or unwilling to receive a vaccine shall be required to submit a negative COVID test once per week.
So that could be done in advance of the vote on, if that's the will of the board.
Either through an amendment or through a friendly amendment if it's acceptable to the movement in the second.
Thank you. Mr. Moroski.
Yeah, I would just suggest that, that sentence and then Mrs. Bates's 3 proposals just be added as friendly amendments, and we can discuss that then. And probably have a third discussion about this tonight, which is fine. It's important, and we need to make sure we get it right. I agree with Ms. Bolton that I do think we need to pass something this evening as we get into the fall. And our next meeting isn't for another couple weeks, so. We may not all agree on the different facets of it, but I think that those 4 amendments, I can't be a motioner or a seconder, which stinks. So I have no say, but, I say we bring those up during the resolution.
Great. Any other comments before we get to the
We should get to that next. All right. So the next topic we have here, I think we have three people: Member Bates, Member Lindy, and Mr. Moroski. All have a topic on here regarding revisiting our COVID protocols and/or student readmission to school with COVID testing. So I'll open the conversation with those members. Bates.
Well, I wasn't necessarily interested in changing the protocols because our policy said we follow CDC guidelines. But what I wanted clarity on, and what I'm hearing from community members that they want clarity on, is how the CDC guidelines are being interpreted, because the health department, who we rely on greatly, Dr. Mussman, a great partner, is interpreting the guidelines one way, and then families are getting different advice from their private pediatricians who are interpreting them another way. And in particular, if there's a positive quick test, rapid test, and the CDC guidelines allow for a follow-up test, a PCR test. And unless they're done simultaneously, the health department is recommending to us that we accept the PCR test, is my understanding. But some of these families are getting the negative and then 24 hours later are getting the PCR test. So there's confusion. We just need to let people know what we're accepting.
Ms. Monty, can you please?
Oh, sorry.
So we have 3 different categories of students who can be quarantined. So if you come to school as a learner or as an adult staff member and you have COVID-like symptoms, then you will be asked to go home or receive a COVID test there at school or receive one in the community. If that test comes back negative, you can come back to school. If you're a community close contact, meaning that you were exposed in an outside setting outside of school, and you're symptomatic, you stay home, and then you have to have a test, or you don't have to have a test. What some families are doing is that they are going to get tested, that test is coming back negative, and they're coming back to school. So community close contacts, they want to come back to school, and we're saying no to them. So a community close contact, I have to be quarantined at home. Regardless of whether that test says positive or negative, I am still at home for 10 days. And I understand that some families follow up with their providers because they want to know if their child is going to test positive on that test. But what the research says is that child can pop positive at any time during that 10-day period. So even if they get a negative test on day 4, they could turn positive on day 9 and be back in a school setting where they could potentially infect other children. That's the community contact. The other type of close contact is the in-school situation. So as you may remember, at this time last year, we didn't have that as an option. This year, under the new Ohio Department Health Guidelines, we have the option that if I become a close contact to a person who's been exposed to COVID and I've been potentially exposed, as long as I am asymptomatic, I can remain in school. And as soon as I develop symptoms, however, I need to go home. And if that child is tested, whether that test is positive or negative, that child still has to stay home for that 10 days. And so I think that's where part of the confusion comes in for folks, is that really the only children or adult staff members who can re-enter school with a test are those students who are not close contact. So we did have conversation with the health department over last week about the question around tests, because Mrs. Bates, you are exactly right. The health department was very concerned about the false negatives that can happen with rapid tests. It's a 20% false negative rate. However, we recognize that for many of our families, for many of our employees within the district, that rapid tests are what we have access to. So not test and protect the PCRs, but Walgreens, CVS, many urgent cares do rapid tests. So last Thursday, in a meeting with the epidemiologists from the city and along with their medical team, they've made the decision to allow rapid tests for those students who exhibit COVID symptoms. We're changing all of our letters as we speak. I just got a text from someone who's working on that, and that will be changed on Wednesday, take effect on Wednesday. So I appreciate your questions. It is much more complex this year than it was last year. Last year, everyone followed the exact same guidance, whether you were in school or whether you were community quarantine. Quarantine was quarantine. This year, we have many more types, and I think it is confusing. So I appreciate the question.
Thank you so much. Talk about knowing the answer. Thank you. Anybody else on that topic? Yes, Mr. Lindy.
Thanks, Mr. Messer. And Ms. Bundy, thank you so much for your responses. I have I'm wondering if I might actually just catch Ms. Bundy after the meeting for 2 minutes. Is that possible? Great, thank you.
Mr. Moroski.
Thank you, Mr. Messer. So I had the same part of my wanting to talk about revisiting COVID protocols was the same as Ms. Bates. So thank you for that, Ms. Bunty. I appreciate it. I was hearing similar confusing messages, I think, that Ms. Bates was. And so that was most instructive for me. I think, let me see here. I only have like a couple left, and I don't necessarily need the answers tonight. I know one of the speakers, question number one, one of the speakers in the hearing of the public brought it up about the instructional plan for kids at home. And if that is like a quicker answer, and if the superintendent does want to address it, because I know it came up in the hearing, obviously feel free. But I was kind of curious to that too, because right now I know, so much has changed. We have the CDA option, which is awesome. But if someone is home and quarantined, what's the instructional plan there? Are there packets like last year? And I probably just missed it. So just a refresher for me, really.
Yes, we are posting assignments on Schoology. So again, it's not that direct instruction because the teacher is teaching, but they can access the work. And I would highly recommend as well for students, they can always follow up with their teachers via Schoology as well.
That's great.
But we are posting, we are learning from last year, and all lessons and assignments are posted on Schoology.
That's great. I appreciate that so much. My second one is something to maybe think about. I've seen, the Rockdale presentation was awesome because the kiddos were out there encouraging their peers to stay 6 feet away from one another and when they're outside on the playground. I've seen myself and certainly heard reports from educators in the district, that this is not the case at every school. And, it's hard. The kids get outside, they want to play, they're on top of each other. I may, want to throw out there, what would it look like to some folks if we did ask for masks on the playground? Because again, the kids are kids and they want to play and they're jumping on top of each other. And I don't know that the 6 feet or even 3 feet rule on the playground is actually even reasonable to ask. And so it was something I just kind of wanted to put out there and see, if we may want to consider. I'm not saying wear masks outdoors for all outdoor everything. I'm not, but perhaps at recess, particularly in some of our more packed schools. So I guess I don't really need a response, but maybe put that out there as something to think about, and maybe somebody could, we could bring it up when we talk about health and safety at our next board meeting, whether or not we want the children to have masks on at recess again. And then lastly, and I will probably make this a formal assignment to our policy committee, I just kind of wanted to bring up, yeah, I feel good about the vaccination policy for adults. We'll see where that goes, of course, tonight. But I am most interested in now talking about what a vaccination policy looks like for students who are eligible. And I'll probably be given that assignment later on. But that's it for me.
Thank you. All right. And then the last topics here under board matters, board code of conduct and social media policy. I think in the world of good governance and making sure that we're all doing what we're supposed to be doing with so many eyes and that type of thing, I think there are these two specific documents. Our bylaws refer to the OSBA code of conduct. And I can't say that, in my 4 years, there's been a whole lot of discussion about what those mean and actually taking those into application into everyday life of a board member. And then, this is a world that there's lots of information that's shared in social media. And, there have been some communication where people believe that maybe it appears that we've made decisions in social media comments that we hadn't actually made yet. And there is guidance, at least through SBA, et cetera, the board members should never really state their opinion until a board discussion and a vote has been made. And then as we're making comments, making sure that it's individual and all that stuff. All that said, as I was doing kind of the exploration piece, there's a lot of training. Some districts formally adopt the policy and review them and then kind of do an annual sign off. Some do an annual training. And so I would love to, I'd love to see us create a social media policy. I don't think we have one. I think we have one for staff. I think there is good cause to have that for the board as well. And then I think it'd be a good practice, and we have an upcoming retreat on the 16th, to use some of that development time to really dig into that code of conduct is at least a guideline that our bylaws refer to. Again, that I haven't really felt we've done a whole lot with in my 3.5 years on the board. And I thought that might be a venue that we could review that together, align on what these things mean, and then figure out how we build that into our practices going forward for board members in the future. Comments? Ms. Bolton.
Thank you. We periodically redo the protocol. In the last 6 years, we've done it, I think, 3 times. And because to make it relevant to what we do, I would only suggest that I think we do need a social, communication policy at least, or within the protocol about board members. I do think it's when board members always have to say we are speaking as one board member, not speaking on behalf of the board. That's a critical part. The other part of this is that we can have opinions and say them until we vote as a board. And then once we vote as a board, we no longer have our personal opinions. It's when the corporate board has decided. So I think that's the only thing I kind of find fault with, is that I think into this we can be expressing our opinions, but that one voice comes through the effort and once the vote has taken place. So I think that's some good stuff to have a discussion about, whether it's at the retreat or some other area. But a social media part of the protocol, I think, would make sense.
Just say, what I was talking about on the board members sharing their opinion is I saw this in multiple large urban districts in their policies. And then one of them I went through the training, and it very explicitly said, we should never say, claim that we've made it, this is what we need to do until you've heard the public and actually gone. And so you're supposed to be open and not kind of say, I've already decided long before I go into the meeting. So that's what I'm saying is about, you could say, here are the things that I'm thinking about,
But anything that says we need to do this, we will get this instated, I will get this done, or whatever, is stating that you've made a decision before you've gone through the process of aligning with your board members and hearing other perspectives, et cetera. So that was a big part of one of the trainings that I did a couple of Saturdays ago. But it did say you could give opinions on topics, as long as you had a disclaimer, this is the opinion of me as one member and does not represent the entire board. All things that, frankly, I probably should over the past 3.5 years. There's things that I probably should have put there. I think I assumed, but it was the more you dug into it, I think it was really good training for me, even to just start to build the boundaries of what's governance, what's administration, and how does that, play out very specifically in the code of conduct. And I thought some of the districts who had specific training around it, I thought it was case-based, and I got a lot out of it. So I think having something for board development, we all know there's going to be at least 2 new board members in the new year. And, for generations to come, I think it'd be a good practice, as it seemed like a lot of districts had that as an annual practice and activity. Okay?
So are you going to make the assignments?
Yes. So I thought, that the one that we build into our board retreat, and then the other we send to the policy committee. Now, got a stack of resolutions here. All right, Mr. Moroski, you're up. Oh, that's right.
I am up. All right. Let's do it. 3111.
Somebody actually on the floor here do that one. So, Ms. Bowers, could you do the first one?
Yes, I have before me a resolution amending board policy 3111.1, selection of principals. I present this resolution as written.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Ms. Wagner, please call the roll.
Mrs. Bates?
Aye.
Ms. Bolton?
Aye.
Mrs. Bowers?
Yes.
Mr. Lindy? Vice President Messer?
Yes. All right, Ms. Bolton.
Yes, a resolution amending board policy 3111, creating a position, professional staff. I submit and hope for approval.
Is there a second? Any discussion? Ms. Wagner, please call the roll.
Mrs. Bates?
Aye.
Ms. Bolton?
Aye.
Mrs. Bowers?
Yes.
Mr. Lindy? Vice President Messer?
Yes. All right.
Mr. Lindy.
And Mr. Lindy, could you present your resolution?
Thank you very much. Give me 1 second. Okay, I am proposing a resolution amending board policy 4111, creating a position from the policy committee, and I present this resolution as written.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Ms. Wagner, please call the roll.
Mrs. Bates?
Aye.
Ms. Bolton?
Aye.
Mrs. Bowers?
Yes.
Mr. Lindy?
Yes.
Vice President Messer?
Yes. Ms. Bowers, could you present the next resolution?
Yes, I have a resolution amending board policy 5321, requirement to wear masks to prevent the spread of COVID-19. I present this resolution as written.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Ms. Wagner, please call the roll.
Mrs. Bates?
Aye.
Ms. Bolton?
Aye.
Mrs. Bowers?
Yes.
Mr. Lindy?
Yes.
Vice President Messer?
Yes. Ms. Bolton.
Oh, I don't think so. No. Here we go. I'm gladly presenting a resolution adopting a new board policy, 5322, COVID-19 vaccine requirement for employees. I submit and hope for approval, and it would have to be, General Counsel, is this not already revised, is it? Okay, so I submit as written and need a second and then for discussion.
Second.
Thank you. Discussion.
Okay.
Ms. Bates?
Never mind.
I have several relatively minor edits. In the first line, I would like that specified or as instead of effective for the 2021-22 school year, effective beginning with the 2021-22 school year. And the second line, instead of employees and partners to receive a vaccine, the revision would be to be fully vaccinated. At the very end, I propose adding CPS shall follow all federally mandated standards concerning COVID-19 vaccine.
Ms. Bowers?
Yes, I would like to add to the presented resolution, employees who are unwilling or unable or unwilling to receive a vaccine shall be required to submit a negative COVID test once every 7 days.
Ms. Bates?
I would like to revise that further and say employees and co-located partners.
So just including co-located partners to that? Great.
Yes.
Any other adjustments? Ms. Bolton?
Yeah, if I could, I have a question, probably for general counsel or for the board. On the exemption folks, be they for medical or religious, are we requiring them to submit to weekly testing?
I would, if I may.
Yes, Mr. Hoying.
Yes, the proposal is that someone qualifying for an exemption would also be required to submit to. That would be, as we said, unwilling or unable, someone unable to be tested.
So if that's clear enough, I mean, I can see it, I'm aware of it. Do we feel it's clear enough that they'll be being tested as well?
Administration does, yes.
Could I ask another question, if I might? I'm concerned, having lived through this audit that we've gone through regarding the benefits department over and over. Can we be a little bit more precise about where these this information is submitted, rather than saying the benefits department? Can it be the director, or can it be? Is there somebody else that? Right.
Where do you, what paragraph is that?
Got it, and the first one did it. I came into the other one. Yeah, fourth paragraph, that second line. Request for accommodation form. I mean, we have had no less than 7 meetings, if I recall, about the benefits audit. If we could maybe, is there somebody that's actually kind of in charge of all of this? I hate to give.
So one of the things that we discussed was that religious exemptions would go to the legal counsel's office for review, and that medical exemptions would be reviewed by folks in the talent department. We discussed that depending upon the decisions here tonight, that would be the pathway that we would follow.
So can we change the policy saying that it's benefits department? If these things are going to 2 different places, that would help me. I appreciate it.
Yes, yes.
Mr. Chair, could I ask another question? When we've added the CPS shall follow federally mandated standards, are we talking about education, or all of them?
Concerning COVID-19 vaccines.
Yes.
What do you mean by?
Well, I mean, we found out that even the federal thing right now that exists doesn't pertain to education or schools. I'm just saying if it.
Well, it does to Head Start.
Well, it does, but I'm saying then we would be. Is that clear enough? I mean, we've been thinking it's been about employers and employees. Are we good with that?
Why don't we say follow all federally and state mandated standards.
No, I don't want to follow anything Columbus is doing.
Well, if it's mandated, I don't think we're going to have a choice. But if we say state, that would cover it if there was some, down the
So
pipe.
we might, like other people, other school districts in other states, say, forget it. So, I mean, I'm cool with the federal thing.
Okay, unless we got state.
But I mean, is that, General Counsel, is that okay that it's all federal, whatever? You wrote it.
No, I told him.
Did you tell him? You two wrote it. Is that clear enough?
It's clear to me, yes.
Okay. All right. That sounds good.
Okay.
Could I also, real quickly, since we're doing this, thanks for that answer and the benefits thing and that and this. We do need an S in the first paragraph. Second time we say partner. And could we, instead of say buildings, can we say facility?
Mm-hmm.
We got a concession stand and that kind of stuff. And fields.
What about those who work in auxiliary capacity?
Yeah, that's excellent.
But that's not a district building.
That's right. But it is our employee, so they would be covered as an employee.
Well, what about partners? Do we pay for partners?
Do we have
to go to parochial private schools?
I think employees covers the folks we have working.
Employees, but do we have partners that we pay going to these schools?
Mm-hmm.
And are we going to require them to be under this policy?
Here she comes.
Right.
I'm going to ask Susan Budsey to come down.
So we would need to provide, so working out of a district facility and other partners. We don't even have to say working out of a district building, any of our partners. But we won't say the building thing. We'll just put a period after and other partners instead of partners, period. And that way, if they're working somewhere else, they're working in a rec center or at a parochial school, has an auxiliary service. What would make it clearer? I'm proposing that after partner, we make that partners, plural, and then put a period there and not specify working out of a district facility. So if they're working...
Or on behalf of CPS. Working out of our buildings or on behalf of CPS in other locations.
Okay.
How about that? So
partners
working out of a district building.
No, facility.
Or, sorry, facility or working on behalf of Cincinnati Public School in other locations.
Does that cover it?
So the folks we were thinking about when we were just talking, we do have some people located in auxiliary who are contract employees, such as speech therapists or occupational therapists who work in those settings. So I think that would cover it.
Okay.
For public dispensation here or whatever, we are not talking about volunteers. I want to hear that.
Okay. Any other comments? Good? All right. So, with these, the amendments, we had 2 amendments. Do we need to get a motion to approve
the
revised?
Not a motion, just Eve and I have to accept them.
We have to.
Okay, so you accept, you had an accept your line. You had a line.
No,
Well, no.
the motion makers have to.
Oh, right, okay. But yours was included. So
Yes,
you can let the motion makers know, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I accept all the friendly amendments.
I do too.
Okay, good. All right. Ms. Wagner, please call the roll. Quickly.
Mrs.
This is
Bates.
what they call
Aye.
sausage.
Ms. Bolton.
Aye.
Mrs. Bowers.
Yes.
Mr. Lindy.
Yes.
Vice President Messer.
Yes. All right. Mr. Lindy.
Thank you. I'd like to propose a resolution amending Board Policy 6836 on the internal audit charter from the Policy Committee. I present the resolution as written.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Ms. Wagner, please call the roll. Oh, any discussion? Ms. Wagner, please call the roll.
Mrs. Bates.
Aye.
Ms. Bolton.
Aye.
Mrs. Bowers.
Yes.
Mr. Lindy.
Yes.
Vice President Messer.
Yes. All right. Mr. Lindy.
Thank you, Mr. Messer. Ms. Bolton and I have been working and updating the board on our work to find a search firm for the hiring of our next superintendent. What I'd like to do, if it's okay with Mr. Messer, is share a little context on what we've been doing, which will lead Ms. Bolton and me to make a recommendation, which would then be in the resolution that we would propose. But I might give a little context first.
That's perfect. Thank you.
Great. So Ms. Bolton, I'm going to start here, and please jump in at any point if there are pieces that you want to emphasize or that I miss here. Does that work okay? Okay.
Yes.
A few weeks ago, we posted an RFP for firms to help us with the search for the next full-time superintendent for Cincinnati Public Schools. In response to that RFP, we received 9 submissions. At that point, Ms. Bolton and I suggested that we rank 4 of those 9 lower than the other 5, largely because they didn't respond to parts of what we had in our RFP. And so we needed to get down to 1 eventually, so we started by looking at who answered all the questions. Ms. Bolton and I then, for the other 5, extended an opportunity for a 30-minute phone, or I guess Zoom discussion, Google Meet discussion. And so we created that opportunity for the remaining 5. And we asked, a standard set of questions to all firms, as well as some individual follow-up questions based on their proposal. So from the 5, that led us to a point where we came back to the board in our executive session, updated where we were, and said that there were 3 that had emerged as our top 3. Ms. Bolton, do you want to jump in and share anything I missed?
Yes, we had 3 from the 9, as you suggested. Part of it was the RFP, not meeting the RFP needs, and part of it was the interview, and part of it was additional research, as you suggest. And then we submitted to the board 3 firms that we felt after the interviews at least needed consideration by the full board. And the full board then was given additional information as well as the original material that all 9 had submitted, plus the information that of the questions that we asked in the interview and the responses, and then also an opportunity to review and do their own research regarding those 3 that we believe that definitely rose to the top of the 9 firms. And we have found ways that many of them were similar and many of them were different. But some of the things that were very important where they were similar is that they all felt they could meet our timeline of beginning in mid-September and concluding somewhere in after the November 2nd election, so that the board had determined earlier that new members would at least be able to participate, and that our veterans and already existing incumbents could also then be the people who would be voting. We also found that all of them were pretty amenable to and understanding the board would change during the process. They had dealt with that. Also, they were all very much involved with community and community facilitation and wanting to get that kind of effort done on behalf of the district as we drew up the profile of the superintendent and the wants and the needs that the district and the community have determined. And after doing that, we came to the resolution that we wanted to recommend one in particular. And the one that we want to recommend in particular, Mr. Lindy, is
Alma and Associates. We like them for several reasons. I was going to share a few. Do you want to share any?
Please do. You go ahead and I'll catch up.
So we thought they had some of the strongest experience when it came to urban school districts, and that they had done a particularly nice job with a recent search in Denver, Colorado. We thought they had the best case for the strong stakeholder engagement and facilitation, both of the stakeholder engagement and full board conversations. But they were very committed to engaging with the full board throughout the entire process and creating just enormous transparency into every part of the search. And we thought that their network on recruitment was particularly strong. Am I missing anything?
No, you didn't. And I think it's important they are women and minority owned. They're a reasonably new firm out of Chicago, but have a very long list of success in the urban efforts particularly, but also very proud of all the work they've done in the suburbs and indeed in the rural areas too, because one of their lead folks has worked very extensively in Tennessee as well. So we feel good about the fact that the whole board will be involved with this effort, that the whole community will be involved in this effort, and that we think that the time frame can be met. And we believe that, as Mr. Lindy said, their network is extensive, and they seem very interested in CPS. So on that resolution, we would be willing to take more questions or answers or any additional comments, but we would suggest writing in the Alma firm as the selection. Because as the treasurer's reminded us at least once last week, we can't pass a resolution with a blank. Doesn't work that way. We tried hard, but it didn't go. And so the technical term for this group is Alma Advisory Group. And yes, ALMA Advisory Group. And they are out of Chicago, and that's what our suggestion would be, but it, again, is up to the board. But appreciate the work and the trust that has taken place to get this done.
Any questions for our?
It hasn't been seconded yet.
Oh, can I get a second?
Did we do a motion?
I didn't.
I don't think I made the motion yet, but I will. Ms. Wagner, did you have me down already?
I did.
Great. So let's just assume I did that. Clairvoyant. That's fantastic.
Okay, now we can do discussion.
I would just first of all like to thank Board Member Bolton and Board Member Lindy for all of your committed work into deciphering this and going through this. As a representative of the board, it's a lot of work, for sure, but I think that you guys put a lot of effort, and I trust the decision that you made with Alma. I did read that one, and it was pretty detailed and pretty diverse, so I appreciate your work.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right. Ms. Wagner, please call the roll.
Mrs. Bates. Aye. Ms. Bolton.
Aye.
Mrs. Bowers.
Yes.
Mr. Lindy.
Yes.
Vice President Messer.
Yes. And I too would like to add my appreciation to members Bolton and Lindy, who gave up significant time, not just kind of coaching us through the process, but meeting in advance and putting everything in a nice detailed order, looking at the things that the board agreed were important, and then bringing back the results from quite a number of potential candidates. So thank you for all those
hours and the effort you put into that. Thank you. All right. Interim Superintendent Ahmad, do you have a report?
Yes, I do, and I'll make it brief. Next slide, please. I am pleased to announce for the second year in a row, Cincinnati Public Schools has been ranked as one of the best places to work in Ohio by Forbes magazine. CPS is only one of 2 districts that made the list of the 100 best employees. This is a recognition of the hard work of our 6,000 CPS staff members who stepped up and helped with health and safety, the well-being of our students, from giving out devices and feeding them, to transporting students, to our wonderful leaders. And we just thank you for helping us to achieve this wonderful accomplishment for the second year. Next slide, please. The Montessori application period. I think this is great information and just wanted to get it back out to our community that for our new high school Montessori application period for in-district families will currently attend a CPS Montessori program. So this will allow families to apply for early and secure enrollment at Clark and Gamble. And the application period begins September 21st, next week, and continues until October 29th. Next slide, please. The Beyond the Tassel speaker series. We will have a Facebook event on the 14th at 2 p.m. Our segment is really going to be on Naviance, a wonderful tool that help families and students navigate the process from anything from building a resume, helping with college interest. So we just ask that people come out and participate on Facebook September 14th at 2 p.m. That concludes my report, and I submit the written report for approval. Thank you.
Do I have a motion to approve the superintendent's recommendations?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, Ms. Wagner, please call the roll.
Mrs. Bates? Aye. Ms. Bolton?
Aye.
Mrs. Bowers?
Yes.
Mr. Lindy?
Yes.
Vice President Messer?
Yes. Ms. Wagner, do you have a report?
Just a report, the written report submitted for approval.
Very good. Do I have a motion to approve the report of the treasurer?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Ms. Wagner, please call the roll.
Mrs. Bates? Aye. Ms. Bolton?
Aye.
Mrs. Bowers? Mr. Lindy?
Yes.
Vice President Messer?
Yes. All right. There was an inquiry and update, Ms. Bolton.
Yes, thank you. And it's my understanding that the administration has been working on this, which is great. You will recall that we attended the City Council Budget and Finance Committee meeting, I think on August the 30th or thereabouts, and are expected to return 4 weeks hence from then. And also in the interim, we've received communication from Metro regarding this year's addendum or amendment to the contract that is in its 5th year. And knowing that, my interest in raising this is to remind the board, which doesn't need any reminding, that we are pursuing the restoration of the extra route. And the administration's been clear with both the city and also with Metro and SORTA about that, and we've been clear with the SORTA board as well. And I think in answer to the recent communication to the from Metro that we do ask, obviously, an assignment period, a response from the administration, an additional letter. but also try very hard to request, frankly, demand in answer to City Council's efforts, as well as our own efforts, to convene a meeting of the committee that was formed so that some board members of SORTA and some members of this board and the CEOs of both groups have another meeting, because we still are at odds and need to report that as best we can and see if it still can't be resolved. So I'm just reminding and hoping that there'll be an assignment to the administration to facilitate that and keep the discussion going.
Thank you. Any assignments? Oh, okay.
Thank you, Mr. Messer. I have an inquiry, preferably for.
Assignment.
Oh, Mike has a question. Before I.
No, we had some inquiries that didn't make it to the agenda. So we'll
cool.
get assignments.
Okay.
1 second.
All right, Assistant Superintendent Bunting, I think this is for you. Can you clarify the consistency or the efficiency protocol for a nurse being in a building to do all the COVID contact tracing? Because I'm not certain that it's actually going on if every school has a nurse, for one. And if not, are we seeking to maintain that? And then the efficiency or the consistency in reporting out and processes and protocols for COVID, if we don't have a nurse in the school, that can be interrupted. So I want to make sure that if we're able to have a nurse in every school.
So it is our goal to have a nurse in every school. There are shortages at the Cincinnati Health Department, as there are nationwide for healthcare professionals. They are actively hiring, and our hope is not even our hope, our aim is to have a nurse in every school. That said, schools have been partnered. So if there's a school that does not have a nurse that day, they will have a nurse the next day, and then supervisors are actively monitoring when a nurse is not there. We're doing our best to get supervisors on site as well.
Is there any way in that absence that we can keep that low? Something happens when the nurse is missing as far as information getting to parents about contact tracing, directions on what to do. So
Yeah.
that can get mixed up when there's not a nurse. Is there any way to make sure that just by talking about COVID testing and protocol earlier with Board Member Bates, to clear that up? Because I think we lose a little bit of information or consistency.
No, I do, yes. And so we are going to review, again, with our school teams, the letters that need to go home with students as they exit if they are symptomatic. And then they will have follow-up from either the nursing supervisor or the nurse that comes that next day.
I think that would be helpful.
Yes,
Thank you.
I agree. No, thank you.
Somebody else had another inquiry. Mr. Lindy?
This was just a follow-up to Ms. Bolton's, and I promise will be very quick. We talked in an earlier meeting about some data from SORTA where they would have an update for us on the 13th. I just wanted to hear where that was.
So we did receive an initial data request or data set from Metro today, and so I'll be sending that to you guys in a memo tomorrow.
That's really great news. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Assignments. Mr. Moroski?
Thank you, Mr. Messer. So for our next policy meeting, as I was saying before, it wasn't going to be the 30th. It's going to be September 24th. I'd love to assign to the General Counsel's office if we could get a draft of what a potential vaccine requirement for eligible students could look like.
Could you clarify that? I think could you say that one more time?
Draft, asking General Counsel to draft a potential policy for the COVID vaccine requirement for eligible students. So we could see what that might look like and what it looks like around the country, similar to the process we engaged in for the employee vaccination.
Perfect. Thank you.
No problem.
Any other assignments? Ms. Bolton?
Yes. One in particular is in reference to our search effort. I think kind of clear based upon the submission what the contract would look like, but ask general counsel. And I think it's Krista Boyle, and also so far it's been Paul McDowell that has been helping as the administrative team to begin and end as quickly as possible the contract with the firm so that they can actually have the start as early as possible to keep us on our timeline. That would be one assignment. Also, I think it would be great to, I think the administration's working on that MOU with 5 of our 6 labor groups. Obviously now with the guidance from this past policy, some of those items can be eliminated in the MOU, but to assign that to bring back to the board as it would be between the board and the labor folks. And then the other is that letter that we mentioned, trying to get the meeting with the reconvening that committee so that we can report back to council, or that we can hopefully try to convince them with some of this data that Mr. Lindy just mentioned and referenced. There are some reasons to restore those routes or realign them or refresh them or whatever, however you want to call it. So those are my 3, and then I'll be quiet. This epic meeting.
Thank you. Any other assignments? I just have the one for the social media policy to the policy committee, and then for the board retreat that we have aligned on a standardized annual process and a review of board code of conduct, at least the OSBA, and then determine if we need to do anything above and beyond that, since that is already included in our bylaws.
Mr. Messer, I would also add a couple things. One is that a lot of that retreat is going to probably be centered around the superintendent piece, whatever that may mean. And then it's also been brought to my attention, and I said I would say it public and hopefully don't sound too crass, but committee of the whole, the amount of money that we get when we have board meetings is not happening when we have committee of the whole, because it is viewed as a committee. So just that to reference board members about their annual $5,000 stipend, so to speak, that is earned at meetings.
Mm-hmm. Good clarification.
Yeah, I know. So don't be counting on it, because, but I do think we need to.
Are you saying we
back.
don't get a big salary? Is that what you're trying to say? I think, yeah, that's a good learning for some people.
And we also do not have, what is it, an expense account,
Yes.
unless we're traveling out of town or something.
Yeah.
But I think we should reconsider maybe the executive sessions. Probably might be the kinds of things, since we've lost at least one a month on committee of the whole. But
Yeah.
something for maybe staff to look at.
So maybe we
can
can put that on a topic for the retreat.
Yep. Thanks.
Okay, folks. Well, thanks for being with us here tonight. It's been real and fun. I would like to call your attention to this weekend's activities. My people celebrate in June, and we celebrate my German heritage for Oktoberfest, which is this weekend, coming back here to Cincinnati. My Lederhosen have been out at least for 2 weeks hanging, and hope to see some of you there for Oktoberfest. And I understand it'll be televised, so you can do the chicken dance right from your living rooms or wherever you might be. And I encourage all of our staff to indoctrinate our children into one of the greatest heritage points of the city. We are the largest chicken dance in the world. Ladies and gentlemen, take care of yourself and each other. Have a good night.
Night night.